All right. Thank you, everyone, for listening today. Welcome to the rookie debut, the inaugural version of the Heroes and Icons podcast. Our show today is brought to you by my friends at Baseball Seams Company. They're based in South Dakota, and they make some great gifts for the baseball fan or the faith-based fan in your life. Again, that's baseballseamsco.com, and seams spelled just like you would spell seams on a baseball, SEAMS. So please remember to find us on, oddly enough, Heroes and Icons podcast on Instagram. You can either also, I'm sure you found us by now on SoundCloud and Captivate podcast venues. So if you would please review this podcast and like and share and all that good stuff, that helps us as well. Let me introduce my guest today. If you've been a fan of baseball over the last 40 years, he doesn't really need an introduction. He played for 12 years in the majors with Pittsburgh, Houston, and St. Louis, and he managed for 14 years in the bigs with Houston, Oakland, and the New York Mets, winning over 1,000 games and 2 American League West Division titles, both with Oakland. He also had stops over several seasons as both a coach and a scout with several different organizations, including the Los Angeles Dodgers, Colorado Rockies, Philadelphia Phillies, and Texas Rangers. As a player, he was a key contributor for the 1980 Houston Astros. He had a huge day at the plate in the 163rd game of the season on October 6th in Los Angeles with a 4 RBI performance, including a clutch 2-run single and a 2-run home run to help the Astros clinch their first ever division title, which was the National League West at that time. With the National League leading .432 average for the month of May in 1981, he was named National League Player of the Month. That year, he set a team record for hitting safely in 23 consecutive games, and he also finished 18th that year in the National League MVP voting. As a coach in 1988 with the Texas Rangers, he was named the Rangers recipient of the Harold McKinney Good Guy Award. No surprise there. And in 1999, as a manager, he was named the Oakland Athletics recipient of their Dave Stewart Service Award. For 4 consecutive seasons with Oakland from 1999 through 2002, he finished second in the voting for American League Manager of the Year award. He managed internationally with stops in the winter leagues for the Vaqueros de Bayamon in 1979 and 1980. And he led the 1994-1995, if I'm saying this right, Azucareros del Este, to their first Dominican League title. He managed China in the 2013 World Baseball Classic. He also coached and managed all-star teams in Italy and Japan. He is a member of several halls of fame, including the Shaler Area Pennsylvania Athletic Hall of Fame, the University of Wyoming Athletics Hall of Fame, the Texas Baseball Hall of Fame, the Houston Astros Orbiters Hall of Fame, and most recently in 2021, he was very deservedly inducted into the Western chapter of the Pennsylvania Sports Hall of Fame. He was a part of 7 Major League postseasons as both a player and a manager, and our guest today is Art Howe. Art, thank you so much for being my guest today. How are you and the family? What's keeping you busy these days?
Well, actually going to the doctor's office. My wife and I, we've had a few appointments here, and my wife's going to have a procedure next month. So hopefully that turns out well, but I think it will. We feel very confident in the doctor, little heart surgery. So
okay, good. Well, I'm thinking about that.
Thank you.
Anything else? Grandkids, golf?
Oh, 6 grandkids. My one grandson is playing golf on his high school team and doing very well.
Oh, great.
My granddaughters are into cheer and all that. I mean, we're constantly going someplace to watch them, perform or the kids, compete in the golf tournaments and that. So that keeps you going. So we're very thrilled that we have 6 healthy young grandkids, and my children are all doing well too.
Oh, great. Great, excellent. Any future baseball players in our down the line there?
Well, I don't think so in my grandkids, but my son actually got to Double-A.
Oh, wow.
With the A's and hurt his ankle very badly and kind of missed out on the whole season, and that put him behind the 8 ball, and that was basically it. He did a little coaching in the minor leagues for a year or 2, but he realized he could make a lot more money elsewhere.
But that's usually the case, unfortunately. Let me start off just with your career in the early days in Pittsburgh. Can you talk about your introduction to baseball? And I also wanted to mention that in your in your Pennsylvania Sports Hall of Fame speech, you prominently mentioned Dev Rupert as a very key figure in your development as both a player and the man you would become. Can you talk about what he meant to you as well?
He meant the world to me. He's the one that really got me involved when I was young into organized baseball.
Sure.
And he was basically my second father. He took me to all the games, challenged me all the time to do better and get the best out of my abilities, and showed me how to play the game really, and was my mentor all along the way. He's passed since then, but he was a wonderful, wonderful person in my life, and I'm sure I wouldn't have ended up where I did without him.
Sure, absolutely, and it's important to make a difference in the lives of others, and he was certainly very, very important to you.
Very much so, and I visit his wife every time we go back to Pittsburgh. I always make a point to stop by,
sure,
and see his wife, and
right.
And that's always nice to see her. And also I grew up in Pittsburgh, so I got to see
right.
a lot of my high school friends when I go back.
Sure.
Go back, and a lot of family still.
Oh, excellent, very good. So in those early days in Pittsburgh, as a youth, what were some teams or players that you followed that you tried to emulate or idolize at that time?
Well, my hero is Roberto Clemente.
Sure.
When you grew up in Pittsburgh in those years, he was the most outstanding player.
Yeah.
And I went to a game early on when I was still a teenager to see him play. Not only him, but the team, the Pirates. But he made a catch in right field. There's bases loaded and one out. Mm-hmm. And I recall him, and at that time, I don't know if anybody knew how great his arm was.
Sure.
He caught it over the shoulder. He was going towards the warning track.
Okay.
Caught it over the shoulder, spun around, and the guy on third was Richie Ashburn, who could run.
Sure.
Threw a seed to the plate. Perfect throw, bang, bang, got him.
Wow.
Double play to end the inning.
Wow.
And that's when I said, wow, this guy's special. Just to see his defense.
All the way from the warning track.
All the way from the warning track, spun around and just fired a BB to the plate.
Wow.
And Richie Ashburn kind of got up like, what happened? That was something. I'll always remember that play. And from that time forward, I always kind of idolized Roberto. Plus, he was an outstanding hitter. When I actually did get called up my first year in the off season, and when we were finished in the minor leagues, since I lived in Pittsburgh, they let me come to batting practice before a few games, and I'd take ground balls at third base, and Clemente, him and Willie Stargell, they swung like 36s,
Wow.
and on the end.
It's like a Bob Watson bat, right?
Yeah, it's a Bob Watson bat, exactly. And it was a different sound when they hit the ball.
Sure.
And I remember it had rained a little bit before we took batting practice, and on the AstroTurf, that was new to everybody, really, at that point. And Clemente, he hit a rocket down to me, like a one-hopper, and it hydroplaned off that, and it hit my wrist, and it had the commissioner's name on my wrist.
Say you didn't tell about it.
And I remember, the guy hitting me, the coach hitting me ground balls, said, hey son, you better go into the outfield before you get yourself hurt. I said, I'm going.
Oh man, that's a great story. It's I'm glad that you were able to kind of see him and maybe take some time with him.
It was nice. Yes. I remember the first time I saw him come into the clubhouse. I think he was 39 years old at the time.
Okay.
And he took his shirt off, and it looked like a 21-year-old body.
Yeah.
I mean, he never lift weights as far as I knew, but his stomach just rippled, with the definition and the muscles, and then I knew why he could swing a 36.
That's all comes from
he
the
was
core,
chiseled. Right? He really was. He was put together.
Excellent. Very good. Very good. Let's see. Was Clemente the only player that you idolized at the time? I mean,
at the time, yes. Yeah. But when I finally got called up to the Pirates, very quickly after that, Willie Stargell became a very special person to me. To this day, he's the best team leader I've ever seen on a baseball team or in a clubhouse. And to give you a couple examples, when I came up, I was 25th man on the roster, hanging on by my fingernails. But he made sure that I felt like I was part of the team.
Right.
He went out of his way to make me feel like I was part of the team. He'd come in early and I'd be there and he'd say, "Come on, Art." Well, actually, he used to call me Arthur. Right. "Come on, Arthur. Let's go down to the batting cage." So I went down there. I figured, well, I'm just going to feed him some balls to hit,
Yeah.
And he was MVP, I'm pretty sure, the year before,
Right.
And we get down there and he insisted on me hitting first. And I'm saying, "Come on, Willie,
Right.
let me feed the machine." He said, "No, you hit first." So after I hit, then I went down and fed the machine to him. And trust me, it was a different sound from his bat and my bat. In fact, I think I got jammed a few times hitting off the machine. He would hit with one hand on the bat and hit line drives, swinging this big thing. He'd choke up on it almost halfway, but he'd use his top hand hitting like maybe 20 swings, and then he switched to his bottom hand and swing one-handed with that, and then finish up with both hands on the bat.
Wow. Okay.
And I asked him, I said, "Why do you do that?" And his explanation made a lot of sense. He says, "It teaches both of your hands to go to the ball."
Okay.
And he says most guys usually are top hand hitters. That's what guides the bat.
Okay.
He said, "I like both of my hands to guide the bat."
Sure.
So needless to say, I tried it a few times, but it didn't work too well for me, swinging one-handed. But it certainly made sense to me.
Okay. Well, very good. Very good. So let me keep going through Pittsburgh here a little bit. So in 1964, you helped your high school baseball team win the state title your junior year. You graduate high school from Shaler. You attend Wyoming on a football scholarship, and then you injured your back your freshman year, and then you turned your focus solely to baseball.
Yes.
At that point.
Well, I hurt my back just running sprints. Actually, I had a slip disc my sophomore year in high school playing football.
Okay.
But I rehabbed it and strengthened it and was able to play my next 2 years without re-injuring it at all. But just running sprints and playing baseball, I was playing both in the spring. I was going to football practice and then baseball practice at night under in the field house, in the armory actually. And I think it was just too much stress on my low back. I was running sprints in the spring with the football team, and my back went out.
Right.
And they put me in the infirmary, and they held me down and gave me cortisone shots in my lower back. And at that time, the doctor there said if I hurt it again, I'd be finished playing any sports. So that's when I made a decision I was going to forget football and try to earn a scholarship in baseball, which I did the next year. So, because my dad was a truck driver. He couldn't afford to put me to school, especially out of state.
Sure.
And the fact that I was able to get a scholarship, I was able to stay at YO.
Okay. Very good. Very good. So after you graduate Wyoming, you're back in Pittsburgh. You're working at Westinghouse. You're playing for the Northside Mets, and you're knocking the cover off the ball. So you go to the Pirates tryout camp at the behest of your friend and coworker, Bill Hauser, but he had actually written all 24 major league teams at that point, and the Pirates were the only ones that came back with a trial offer. That's
exactly the truth. I thought he was blowing smoke because he came out and saw me play several games during the summer, and I was doing pretty well. So he couldn't understand why I wasn't getting signed, but I was 22 at the time. I was going to turn 23 before the next baseball season.
Right.
And I told him I didn't think teams were looking for 22-year-old kids to sign, but he went through so much trouble. I said, I owe it to him to at least go out and do it. Plus, I would never live with myself if I didn't at least go try it.
Right.
I had been to a tryout camp when I was in high school.
Okay.
And at the time, I think the Astros were interested in me, but I told them I was going to go to college. I was going to get in it, so they didn't waste a pick.
Sure.
So I did get, I went tryout camp, spent 6 hours on AstroTurf, and 90-degree heat, had blisters on all my toes and feet.
You were telling me about that.
I was running. I had to run 2 sprints of 60-yard dashes. They timed me. Took infield at third. Took infield at shortstop. Took batting practice. I think I got to swing once. The kid I was facing was wild as a March hare, throwing the ball all over the place. So I figured that was it. I'm done.
Right.
But they called off 3 names. There was over 200 kids there.
Right.
And they thanked everybody else for coming. And they called the 3 names. Ken Mako was one of the other two guys, which is a small world because he became my bench coach out in Oakland.
Yep.
But so we went through, we hit off of coaches. Mm-hmm. Each of us rotated and went to the outfield and shagged. And those 2 they sent home. And on my way in, I was coming in from left field. They told me to stop at shortstop again and hit me some more ground balls up the middle, slow rollers in the hole. Then I'm totally gassed and walking in, and they said, well, you pitched in high school, didn't you? I said, yeah. They said, let's see you throw some off the mound now. So I threw about 15, 20 pitches. They said, let's see your fastball, let's see your curveball, let's see whatever, all your stuff. And I was totally gassed. I don't even know if I threw it 80 miles an hour probably by then. But they said, thanks for coming. So I went in the clubhouse. The other 2 guys had already left.
Right.
And I was just totally exhausted. It took me about 5 minutes just to get the energy to take my uniform off and take a shower. But went home, went right to bed because I was working at Westinghouse. I had to get my rest for the next day, go to work. And my wife came home. She was working and asked me how the tryout went. And I said, I thought it went pretty well. I did the best I could, but I explained to her what happened.
Right.
Well, the next day I got a phone call and they offered me a free agent contract.
Right.
And back then a free agent contract was $0. You were getting an invitation to spring training.
Okay.
They'll pay for your flight down to see if you could make a team.
Okay.
And that's all I wanted, just a chance.
Right.
So that winter I went out to Wyoming, which is pretty high altitude. I figured if I get in shape there, when I go to Florida, it'll be a piece of cake,
Yeah.
And plus I had to lose some weight. I was at 204 working behind a desk at Westinghouse.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, so I went out there and worked real hard and lost 10 pounds.
Okay. Got
myself in good shape. And by the end of that season, I was down to 174.
Wow, 30 pounds, huh?
Because I sent my money home to my wife.
I can see it in pictures on just to explain to the listeners here, there's a nice collage of pictures from Art in its early days, and you can definitely see that you were pretty lean.
Pretty thin,
yes,
yeah. And my wife, when she joined me late in the summer, she couldn't believe it. She could count all my ribs. I looked like I was a prisoner camp invitee,
Sure.
So, but got through that year. I had a real good year. So I led the league in hitting.
Right.
And that's when at the end of the season, I was able to go and take, work with batting practice. I didn't get to hit. I just shagged, when the Pirates were hitting. But that was a thrill for me just to go into that clubhouse because I grew up in Pittsburgh.
Right.
All these guys were...
Yeah, you've seen all these guys.
Yeah, I mean, it was like, what am I doing in this clubhouse, And, Willie Stargell and, Richie Hebner, and Manny Sanguian, and, all of them, Al Oliver. I mean, outstanding team. I mean, they were very good every year.
Sure.
And I was just thrilled to be in the clubhouse, to be honest with you.
Sure. So you made the team out of spring, or you were invited, and then you got a $500 a month contract with Salem at that point for 1971.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was an interesting way they cut players. Each night in your room, the loud address system would click on, and everybody, even if you had music playing or whatever, boom, the music would go off, and everybody would hold their breath and hope they didn't hear their name because whoever was called, they would say, report to the office.
Right.
And that meant you were being sent home.
Sure. And
there was 4 of us in my room. One guy had thrown a no-hitter in Double-A the year before.
Okay.
Other guy had hit like 290-something in High A. Mm-hmm. And the other kid was an invitee like myself.
Sure.
And by the end of spring training, I was the only one left in the room. Wow. And that was really a wake-up call. But the last day of when they made the final cuts, I went to college, I could count.
Yeah.
And I knew the team I was on, there were still too many guys to fit that roster. There were 22-man rosters back then.
Yeah.
And I think we had like 25 or 26 guys still working out with us.
Okay.
So I'm thinking, the axe could still fall on me. But I was doing pretty well in spring training, but you never know. And each manager would call off his roster. Mm-hmm. And if it started with the AAA team.
Sure.
And then if you were on the AAA team working out with them, but your name wasn't called, now the AA manager would call off his roster.
Okay.
And now those guys were hoping to be called for the AA team.
Sure.
And if you weren't, then you knew you were going home.
Okay.
And that's the way they worked it. And they got down to A ball for me. It was high A, Salem, Virginia.
Okay.
And they called off my name. But all the rest of the guys, those last few guys, they all had to go to center field and meet Harding Peterson, who was our minor league director. And he told them they were all going home. Okay. And it was a shame because those kids were the last ones to get cut from those teams. So they could have hooked on with another team. Actually, the kids who got cut earlier in the spring were better off because they could go to another camp and maybe hook on with another organization. So it was pretty heart-wrenching to see these guys. All three of the guys cried on my shoulders at my roommates before they left. So it was tough.
Well, there's only 24 teams at that time, so there aren't as many chances to make another team.
Right.
Yeah.
But, that's all I wanted was a chance, and I was going to get a chance. So off to Salem, Virginia I went.
Very, very good. Very good. So your wife Betty so you're newlywed at this time, and you maybe have a kid or two in tow on the way.
We had one coming in my first year, our oldest, Stephanie.
Okay, and then so I wanted to ask you. So with that situation now, so you're on the road. You're in Salem. Got the new family. So what challenges did that present you guys at that time?
Well, I was making $500 a month, and I had to have two roommates to have a room, an apartment. So we shared the expenses.
Sure.
And it was funny. I just found out this year the minor leagues are getting their rooms all paid for. It
must be nice.
Well, it is. I'm glad they're finally taking care of those young guys because, they're not making any money down there. So it was nice to see that new rule came in. But, we made it happen. I was the driver. We all went in my car to and from practice and to and from games. And I remember one time it was so hot down in Salem, Virginia. We came out one time and I learned a valuable lesson to leave your windows cracked because we had them all shut and it was scalding hot out. I opened the front door and the whole back window went into a cobweb. just disintegrated. So we had to get the back window replaced. But from then on, we left an inch so it wouldn't overheat inside the car. But, those are funny things we remember going back. But the one good thing about Salem, Virginia is if you hit a home run at home, Pizza Hut gave you all free pizza.
There you go.
So we were all begging to hit one out. And whenever I'd hit one, almost all the whole team would come over with me and we'd get some free pizzas. So that's how we survived for the most part. And there was a fellow, I can't recall his name, he had a restaurant downtown that for $2 you could get a great lunch.
Okay.
And that's where I ate every day at home. I gave him $2 and get a real good lunch. That kept you going. But he did that for the whole team. Whoever came in, it was a $2 lunch.
That's nice that he took care of you guys.
Yeah. Very nice people.
Very good. Very good. So, so you had to do different things back then. Like maybe there's some other challenges with that we don't have today. You have to find a payphone or carry change with you and those type of things that most people now don't understand. I'm 52, so I grew up with a little bit of that, but
you couldn't communicate as much as you did now.
Sure.
Plus, it costs you money to get a long distance call because
exactly.
And they'd tell you, 1 more minute or something like that. So you'd have to hurry up and finish up your phone calls. But yeah, I wouldn't trade it for anything.
And those experiences and those times, I think, are what make us stronger and make us better, because we did have to go through them, and not having them removed or what have you.
Yeah, guess maybe some guys say, "Oh, yeah, I wish I was born now." Not me. I wouldn't have changed anything.
Sure.
Back then you could leave your front door unlocked and
Yeah.
and not worry about anything, and let your kids go out and play wherever,
yeah,
and not worry about anything. Times certainly have changed.
Sure.
Not for the better.
No, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, maybe those things will come back around.
I hope so.
Good. So let me ask you, also in those days, in regards to equipment and teams being notoriously tight-fisted then on purchases, or maybe all the way through time, what was it like trying to acquire or negotiate equipment in those days in the minors?
Well, the fact that I led the league in hitting my first year helped, because I got a contract with a bet. I can't even remember what the. Let me see that bat there. Louisville Slugger.
Slugger at Adirondack.
Yes, but I had a contract with Louisville Slugger, so I could get a few bats sent to me. I mean, back then, it was all wood,
right?
And if you broke them, you're in dire shape, because everybody treasured their few bats that they got.
I can imagine.
It was like gold. You took care of it.
Yeah.
But and the glove, I got a glove from Louisville, and so you just took care of it as best you can, and that was it. You were lucky to get anything else. The uniforms were supplied by the team,
sure,
so you didn't have to worry about that. But your shoes, you had to go out and pay for your own shoes and things. So yeah, money was tight, and we used to get $5 a day meal money on the road.
Okay.
Yeah? And McDonald's was a big favorite of ours. Plus, you had to tip the clubby on the road.
Yeah.
So we would get food after games,
right,
and maybe before games a little bit. So he was buying all that food, so you had to tip him.
Sure.
So the $5 really didn't cover much of each day.
Well, probably not. I can't imagine that it would. That's not a lot of money at any time.
No.
So you mentioned that you led the Carolina League with the Salem Rebels, hitting you hit 348 in 1971.
338.
338.
I think, is that what that says up there?
I
can't even remember.
Let's see. No, 348.
348.
Yes, sir.
I was cheating myself out of 10 points.
Exactly. How many hits is that? I wonder, for a minor league season.
I don't know. I couldn't tell you, but I know I took a lot of extra BP.
I bet.
We had a little cage up on the hill above the ballpark there, and me and maybe another guy would go up there and try to throw to each other to keep our strokes going. But yeah, it was fun. The road trips, 10-hour bus ride, we'd fight for those berths up above. That's where people put their luggage and everything. Now, we used to fight to get up there to go to sleep. So the first guys on the bus would get those prime lofts, we would call them.
You race out there for them almost.
But we also got to know each other, 10 hours playing cards together,
right?
Telling each other about our backgrounds and our families and everything. You really got to be friends, and I still have friends with guys since I played all the way back then.
Sure. In
contact with them. It's great.
Excellent. Very good. So you actually played in the minors with Ken Macha.
No, he was a level below me, actually. I think he signed maybe the year after I signed.
Might be off a year. Okay.
Yeah, I think he would. I did play a little bit in the big leagues with him. He came up at towards the end of my second year in the big leagues.
Okay, so 75.
And we played together there a little. But that was it. And it was amazing how things happen. Years and years later, we hook up together in Oakland. So that was fun. He did a great job for me as a bench coach. And he eventually became a manager. So I was really happy for him.
Good. Excellent. Very good. Very good. So can you talk about some other guys you play with? A guy named Chuck Goggin, who was the most Let's see if let me make sure I'm saying this right. He was the most decorated, or the Major League Baseball player who was the most decorated Vietnam veteran in that time in his days in the Marine Corps. And you played with him in Charleston.
Charleston.
Right.
Second baseman. He could play.
Yep.
And it was back then, it was really hard to get to the big leagues because, if you're playing behind Willie Stargell, how many opportunities you're going to get.
Sure.
We had a first baseman who hit over 300 every year at AAA, and I think he got called up once, maybe twice in September with the Pirates because they didn't have a need. They had Bob Robertson at first base, and Willie played some first base back then.
Sure.
So, it was really, really difficult. You just didn't have the minor league situation the way it is now. You didn't have free agency.
Right.
We were a pawn as far as the major league teams were concerned. We were like security blankets in case somebody got hurt up there.
Sure.
They could, call you up, and that's basically the way you got called to the big leagues. In case somebody really was doing really poorly up there, then you might get a chance.
Or if there was a big injury, unfortunately, to somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's basically what happened with me. It was about 18, I think they had called up 8 other guys during the summer, and I'm leading the league in hitting, and I'm still in Charleston, West Virginia, wondering what's going on here, But I think the guy, that on the big club was a utility guy. He wasn't doing well. And, they finally gave me an opportunity, but I had to grease the wheels a little bit to have that happen, I think.
Okay. How did you do that? How did you go about that?
Well, after the day our minor league director, Harding Peterson, came to visit us in Charleston, West Virginia. I remember it was a real hot summer day as usual there. And this is like in July, early July,
right.
Almost mid-July. And he came in and said, and that day they had called up our center fielder, Dave Augustine, who was hitting 188.
Oh, wow.
And I was hitting like 350 something, maybe 360 something. And he came in, he says, "Hi boys, is there anything I can do?" And I said, "I'll tell you what." And I told him, I said, "What do you have?" He says, "What can I do?" And I says, "What do I have to do to get to the big leagues?" Hit 188, I said, "Give me 2 weeks, I can get there." In other words, not get a hit for 2 weeks, I'd be down to 188.
Right.
And he said, "Yeah, nobody talks to me that way, and I never did,
Sure.
I was like, no one even knew I existed." And I said, "Well, I'm talking to you that way." He says, "Well, if you want to talk to me, let's step outside." I says, "Let's go." So I got everything off my shoulders, and, the way they were calling people up, and I was doing great, and I wasn't getting a chance, and I just wanted a chance. That's all I said. I just want to see if I can play in the big leagues. I think I earned the right to find out.
Right.
And I missed batting practice and infield because we were out there. And I remember one of the comments he made to me. He says, "Art, I've always been in your corner." And I said, "Well, that shows how much pull you have in this organization." I said, "Look at me. I'm in AAA still, aren't I, Pete?"
Well,
and he said, "Oh, don't say that." I said, "Well, here I am. I'm in Charleston, West Virginia. I guess you don't have much pull." The next day, I got a call from my manager. "You're going to the big leagues."
There you go.
Actually, I went 3 for 5 that night after missing, all that. I got 3 more hits. So I guess that helped. And they called me up the next day.
Well, you got your money's worth.
Yeah.
In that conversation.
I let them, maybe, they needed to see that I had a little spunk.
Sure.
Because I was, just doing my job, being quiet and being respectful and everything.
Sure. What's the expression? Sometimes you have to toot your own horn. Is that?
And I actually was feeling guilty the next day, to be honest with you. Driving up there, it was about a 5-hour drive from Charleston, West Virginia to Pittsburgh. And I was thinking to myself, "Oh man, are they calling me up because I complained?
Right.
Or did I really earn this chance?" And
sure.
And I just said, "Hey, I earned this. I should get this shot."
Well, at that point, that's your 4th year in the majors. I'm sorry, excuse me, the minors.
Yeah.
Before you're called up, and you've proven yourself as a hitter at that
level. Yeah. And I had told my wife going into that season, I said, if I don't get called up, if I don't get to the big leagues, I'm calling it quits. I'm going to go to Westinghouse, go back to work there. And because, I'm away all summer and everything in the minor leagues. We're not making any money. I had to borrow money from my parents one year, which was very hurtful. I didn't ever want to have to borrow money from my dad. And yet, because I think all my brothers had done it. But I did because I had to. But I repaid them as soon as I could. But it was hurtful. And my pride was hurt.
That's a tough situation. I can imagine.
So, got to the big leagues that night, and first guy in the clubhouse. I went right to the clubhouse. I didn't even go home or anything. I went straight to the yard. And like I said, I was the first one in there. And on my locker, I was next to Bob Moose. I remember Moosey. He was a reliever on the team. He was quite a character. Him and Dave Parker used to have a lot of fun with each other.
I bet.
They used to call each other names that you couldn't do these days.
Yes,
but it was all in good fun.
Right.
It was all in good fun.
Absolutely. So when you get there, do they just automatically assign? It's like here, Howe, you're going to wear 18. Is that pretty much how that happened?
Yeah, it was 14. They gave me 14.
I'm sorry.
And
backwards 14.
Well, the reason I took 14 at that time, Ed Ott was a close friend, and we had played some minor league ball together. And Otter was a heck of a catcher and tough kid.
Sure.
And I think he for some reason wasn't on the team at that time. I can't recall why. But he told me you could have my number, and so I took 14. But I remember I had number 8 in the minor leagues. And Willie Stargell wore number 8 in the big leagues.
You weren't going to get that one.
And Willie, and this is the kind of guy Willie was.
Yeah.
He came over to me like the first day or so, and he says, what number were you wearing down there? And I said, 8. He says, oh, do you want to wear it here? And I said, come on.
Right.
He says, you can have 8. I'll change my number. That's the way Willie was. And he was being honest. I said, no, Willie, no way. I'll take whatever number they give me. But so I took number 14, and that was it for when I was my short stay with the Buccos.
Okay. So you get called up, and you're called up that year, and this is 1974, and you were called up to be the backup to the gravedigger third baseman Richie Hebner. So what was that like? We talked about being called up and getting there, but what was that like when you got that call when you got the call from your manager and you're going? What was that like for your family and everyone?
Oh, it was a thrill. I mean, since I grew up in Pittsburgh, it was my hometown.
Right.
All my guys I went to high school with, and all my neighbors and relatives, everybody was super excited. And they killed me on the pass list. We used to get like 4 family and 2 friends, something like that. And I had to borrow them from all, because I couldn't afford to be buying all those tickets for family and friends. But I worked it out as best I could. But all the guys helped me out because they knew I was from Pittsburgh. All the other, and if they weren't using their tickets, they come over, Artie, you can have mine. You can have mine. So you get on the pass list and you start writing all those guys' names and putting all my people that were coming to see me. But it was nice. It was very nice. And Hacker, affectionately known as Hacker because he hacked at just about everything, Richie Hebner, but he can certainly hit. And you didn't want to throw him the low ball. From the ankles to the knees, he would wear you out.
He was going to golf that
Oh, he loved the ball down there.
Oh, man.
But he was quite a hitter. He hit 300, I think, a couple of years there. And I knew I wasn't going to get much playing time, but whenever I got it, I cherished it, went out and did the best I can. I think I got to play 1 week straight, and only because we won like 6 games in a row. In the 7th game, we lost, and I knew that I was coming out of the lineup. That's the way Danny Murtaugh was.
His streak was over, right?
He would play a hot team or a hot streak.
Right.
He wouldn't change the lineup as long as it was winning.
He was going to ride that out.
He would ride it out.
Yep.
And And the reason I got in the lineup, it was against the Astros. And Richie Hebner, back then, J.R. Richard was pretty wild.
Sure.
In his first couple of years in the big leagues.
Okay.
And he threw a ball 100 miles an hour.
Oh, yeah.
And nobody, even the left-handers didn't want to face him. And Richie Hebner was a left-handed hitter.
Right.
And J.R. is a right-handed pitcher.
Sure.
And Hacker looked at the pitching matchups coming in from Houston, and he saw that, J.R. was scheduled to pitch one of the games.
Yep.
And I think Durker was scheduled for another one.
Right.
And he says, you better get your rest tonight, Artie. My back's starting to tighten up on me. And I thought he was joking, I said, yeah, sure. I knew they were right-handers. The next day, I'm in the lineup. My name's in the lineup.
Yeah.
And Hacker's got a big smile on his face over at the locker. He told Danny Murtaugh, my back's hurting. I can't play.
He sandbagged that one.
So I got in there and probably drew a couple walks from JR and got a couple hits off of Dirk. And we won both games. And then the next series came in and we swept that series. And now Hebner's mad because he wants back in the lineup. But Murtaugh's going. And the funny thing was that the last game we lost, we were playing the Braves, and Ralph Carr's up with the bases loaded, like the top of the eighth. We're up 2 runs. He hits with 2 outs. Okay. He pops up along the foul line. I'm playing third base. Okay. I go over to the stands, and in Pittsburgh, the stands were about 3 feet higher than you were. Okay. They were standing that much higher than you, right. And there was a couple rails, but you could reach between them. Okay. And catch a ball, even though it was going into the stands. Sure. I'm right there ready to catch this foul pop for the 3rd out of the inning. Right. And a fan catches it about 2 feet above my glove.
Oh, man.
Oh, and I'm upset. I'm mad because I know next pitch, Gar triples to right center. Yeah. See, Art, you're out of the lineup tomorrow. Sure enough, I wasn't playing again. But if I had made that catch, and I was going to catch it, it was coming right into my glove.
Well, that was no fault of your own, though.
But it wasn't meant to be, I guess. And, sure. But that was my streak in Pittsburgh. I got to play 7 games in a row there once.
There you go. Well, can I ask you about I want to talk about your debut.
Oh yeah.
So let me set the table here for the audience, and please correct me if I'm wrong. So it's July the 10th, 1974. You're playing at Three Rivers. It's the bottom of the 7th against the Braves. Dave Augustine grounds out. Your pal Mario Mendoza follows with a single. He advances to third on an E9, which is an error by the right fielder. And then Murtaugh says, "Howe, grab a bat. You're going to hit for Patterson, who's the pitcher Darrell Patterson." And Carl Morton is on the mound for Atlanta. And so as a rookie making your major league debut, what type of pitch are you looking for, and what is the bench telling you?
Well, first of all, I was down in the bullpen just trying to help out. I didn't expect to even get in a game or anything.
Sure.
And the inning ended. Between innings, the phone rings in the bullpen. That's down the right field line at Three Rivers Stadium. And they say, send Howe down. He's hitting for the pitcher.
Right.
So, geez, you talk about butterflies, man. I mean, they're going a mile a minute.
Then you have to hoof it down to the dugout.
So I had to run down to the dugout.
Right.
And, by the time I get down there, I'm trying to find my bat amongst all these trees. The Pirates, they all use these 35 or 36. I'm using a 34.5-inch bat, and I can't find my bat, and I'm in a panic. I finally find my bat, and now I got to find my batting helmet. Right. It's in the rack, and I finally get that, and I come out of the dugout, and the home plate umpire, God, it wasn't Doug Harvey, but it was an old Irishman. He had his hands on his hips looking at me. And I'm thinking, I didn't even take any practice swings on the optics. I went straight to the batter's box. And he looked at me and he says, "Are you ready, son?" And I said, "Yes, sir. Yes, sir." And then he laughed. He says, "Don't worry about it. Relax. You're okay." That helped. But I got in the box and I worked the count to 3-1. And I hit a swinging bunt down the third base line.
Okay.
And they let it roll. And there I am. I'm hitting 1,000 in the big leagues.
There you go. it does. So in the baseball reference in the box score, it mentions it reads that you got the single to third, and with Mendoza staying at third. But on the top on your Topps card from 1980, it says that you banged out a single.
Banged out a single.
but you explained it.
But it was funny. The next day, I was pumped. First guy in the clubhouse again.
Heck yeah. Danny
Murtaugh's playing cards with his coaching staff, and they're laughing and everything, having a good time. And I got my back. My locker's here, and I'm getting my stuff out. All of a sudden, it gets real quiet.
Uh-oh.
And I'm wondering what something's up.
Okay.
And Murtaugh walks over, and he had the dry humor.
Sure.
But he taps me on the shoulder, and I turn around and I said, "Yes, sir. Yes, sir." He says, "You know what? You make me sick." And I'm thinking, I'm going back to Charleston. I said, "What did I do, sir? What did I do?" He says, "You know how long it took me to get my first big league hit?" And he started laughing. He said, 14 games or something like that, or 14 at bats. And he says, "Congratulations, son. That's great." And he walked back, and they all laughed over there because they knew how scared I was. But that was okay. That night I pinched hit again, made it out. I had the biggest slump in the history of the game, 500 points.
That's why you're batting 500 now.
Yeah, 500.
You're 1 for 2. So did they throw the ball out of the game for you?
Yes, they did. I got that ball. It might be right in here somewhere. Who knows?
Okay.
My wife has it someplace.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. That's a great.
That's my hit streak over there. Those balls.
Okay.
And 23 game hit streak.
Wow.
That was a triple I hit for my last hit off of Vita Blue.
Wow.
And I'm sure I got my first hit. It might be over there. I'm not. I don't look at them that much.
I understand that. And a lot of guys aren't. I don't think are terribly sentimental in a lot of cases after they've played. But that's great that you had that. That's a great. That's a great moment.
That was nice. That's what I tell people. I don't want to hit it too hard. I wanted to get the ball back.
You don't want to get it fouled off on the next pitch. You don't want the pitcher to get it or anything. So can you talk a little more about your Pirates teammates? When we talked about Willie Stargell, Al Oliver, Richie Hebner, Manny Sanguin, Richie Zisk, Mario Mendoza, Jim Rooker, Steve Blass, Kent Tekulve, Ken Macha, and all those guys. And can you talk about how they influenced you, how to be a professional and tip the club?
Well, first of all, it was a loosey-goosey group.
Okay.
I mean, they were I went from them to the Astros, right. and at that time the Astros had lost like 105 games when I came over there. But when I was with the Pirates, it was unbelievable, the confidence that they had.
Sure.
You could feel it was like, if we do our jobs, we're going to win. Doesn't matter who we're playing.
Right.
That's the confidence they had.
That's a lot of confidence.
If we mess up, we may lose.
Okay.
But if we play our game,
right.
we're going to beat those guys. And that's the feeling you had in that clubhouse.
Right.
It was great. I mean, you could feel it. It was oozing out of them, the confidence. And I played with Richie Hebner. I played with Richie Zisk in AAA, so I got to know Richie there before the big leagues. Mm-hmm. I also played with the big right fielder, Jesus. Came up just before I did from AAA. That's terrible. My memory's going on me. But one of the greats. He had a great throwing arm. Dave Parker. Yeah, I came up with Dave Parker. He came up just before I did. But I played with those couple guys in the minor leagues, and now they're on the big club. But when you mention Al Oliver, mm-hmm. the year I spent there, the 2 years I spent there with the Pirates, a year and a half, whatever it was, he hit the ball more consistently hard mm-hmm. than any other player in the big leagues. His outs were hard.
Yeah.
I mean, Scoop, he could hit. He could flat rake.
Yep.
He choked up about an inch on the bat, and he knew his strike zone. But, man, you couldn't throw a fastball by him.
Sure.
And Sanguin, another guy, you could throw a fastball from the tip of his hat to his ankles, and he was going to hit a BB someplace. I mean, there wasn't a pitch he didn't like. I mean, they could hit, they could rake, and it was infectious.
Sure.
You know, I mean, you were a Pirate. You're supposed to hit,
right?
Man. Let's
and
go.
That came from Clemente because he was the best.
Oh, yeah.
He was the best bad ball hitter.
Yes.
that anyone's ever seen.
Exactly.
Right.
And you know, they never said, "Hey, quit swinging at those," because who knows? They could hit it out of the ballpark if it was on his toes. But it was just great to be around that atmosphere. A championship team. We went to the playoffs, you know, the year I was there, and I got the pinch hit when the games were out of reach. The last game we lost to the Dodgers, and I remember I worked count 3-0, and had to take 3-0, 3 strike 1, right down Broadway.
Right.
Take again, strike 2, and then I got to swing 3-2 and ground it out to short. But man, those first 2 pitches, I felt like I could have done some damage. But hey, when you're 5-6 runs down,
right.
You know, back then that's the way you played the game.
Right.
You made them throw strikes, you know, and that's the way it was supposed to be played. And I agree with that approach.
Well, you played in a great era of baseball. That's for sure.
Yeah, I did.
Let's see, where are we now? So it's the end of 1975, and the Astros trade Tommy Helms to the Pirates. January, you're the
player to be named later.
The infamous player to be named, and then you go to so it's 76 now, and you start off with Astros in Memphis. Is that right? And
right.
You're hitting 471 there, and then you're called up at some point there.
Yeah, they. I was a little upset, to be honest with you. When I came to the Astros, Tal Smith was the GM then, and
sure.
He assured me I was going to get a chance to make the club.
Right.
Because, you know, like I said, they lost 105 games before. And he told me I was going to be competing with my good friend Enos Cabell for third base. Well, I played against Enos in the minor leagues, and he played first base for the Baltimore Orioles at that time.
Yeah.
So I'm figuring, well, if he's coming to third, I've got an edge on him because I've played third base all this time.
Sure.
And I remember telling Tal, well, if that's the case, you're talking to your third baseman right now. And I remember Tal saying, hey, I like that attitude. I like that. Well, as it turns out, there wasn't competition in my book because I hit over 400 during the spring. Mm-hmm. I made one error, and that was like the last game, or we came to the Dome to play.
Right. And
the ball, somebody hit me, we were playing, I don't know what other team, hit me a ground ball to third, hit the seam, and took a nasty hop, and I booted it.
Okay.
And that was the only error I made all spring. Enos made like 10 errors or something during the spring. Yeah. And I know I out-hit him.
Yeah.
When they announced the team, they said that we were playing in the Superdome. We finished in the Superdome.
New Orleans, sure.
And I remember one of the coaches come up to me to tell me I had made the team. You made the team. Mm-hmm. And I says, I know. I mean, I earned that. Mm-hmm. And he says, well, you know, Enos is starting at third base. And what do you mean? Mm-hmm. You know, I outplayed him in the spring, I was told. So I learned a valuable lesson there. You know, you don't believe everything you hear.
Yeah.
And then a month later, I'm sent to AAA,
right, with
only getting like 12 at-bats or something like that. All pinch hits, I think. And I was 1 for 12 or something. Or I know I didn't hit, or 2 for 12.
Okay.
And so I went down to Memphis, and I did well. I hit, like you said, hitting over 400, tearing the cover off the ball. And the same thing, they're calling up different guys during this first few months of the season. Mm-hmm. And then back then, the major league team used to come down and play their AAA team to help raise money, raise funds for the AAA organization or whatever, and have the fans in AAA see major league players.
Sure.
Well, I played that game, and I went 3 for 5 against and hit the triple to beat the major league team that night. And I forget how it went, but I was upset that I wasn't called up, you know, with the big club.
Right.
And the same thing, they called me up. I think I waited till September.
Okay.
I got called up in September.
Okay.
And sat for 26 days or something like that without getting in a game.
Oh, man.
I was thinking, I want out of this organization now.
Right.
As fast as I can.
Sure.
Well, the last 3 or 4 games, all of a sudden, I didn't even at that point even look at the lineup card. I used to just go to the outfield and start shagging.
Sure.
I wasn't going to play.
Yeah.
And all the guys are coming up to me, have you played second base before, Art? Have you played second base? And, we pull each other's chain a little bit, goof around with each other. And I said, okay, I know you guys want me to run all the way in there and look at the lineup card so you can all have a nice chuckle.
Have a laugh at your expense.
So I said, but when Roger Metzger, our shortstop, came up to me and said, hey, have you played second base? Then I thought, well, it's pretty serious. So I ran in, and sure enough, I'm in the lineup playing second base.
Okay.
I'd never played second base in my life. So I go to the on-deck circle. I'm waiting. We're around the cage, take BP. I'm waiting to get my turn to hit, and Bill Verdon's our manager.
Right.
He turns and looks at me, and he says, you have played second base before, haven't you? I said, oh, yeah, I've played a lot of it. And I'm thinking, you idiot. So I go back out after my turn of hitting. I go to Roger. I said, Trout, you make all the calls on coverage and stealers. And to be honest with you, Trout, he was the best I ever played with. I mean, you could close your eyes, run over there with your glove at your chest and hit that, put the ball right there every time. That's how good he was. So, so then I played those 4 games and got a couple hits just about in every game.
Yep.
And called home, and my wife says, man, you're doing great. You're doing great. I said, yeah. I says, I got a bad feeling. She says, why? I says, they're going to keep me now as a utility man because I showed I could play second. They know I can play third.
Right.
I says, in a way, I was hoping I wouldn't do so well, so maybe just get rid of this guy. He can't help us.
Right.
But the next year I did make the big club once again on the bench and playing behind, they traded for somebody, Rob
Andrews.
No, I can't think of it. But they gave him the second base job.
Okay.
And I'm sitting on the pine again. And finally, the injuries, Trout got hurt. They had him, and this guy was struggling. I can't even think of his name. It's terrible. They finally put me out at second, and I start doing, and I hit.
Sure.
And they couldn't kind of take me out of the game.
Sure.
Off the team. So eventually, one thing led to another, and I finally got a chance to start playing third base where I belong.
Sure, absolutely.
But then they brought in, I should have done my homework on my history, on names, but I played first and third the last few years that I was with the Stros.
Yeah.
But at least I was in the lineup.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. So did you know anything about the Houston organization? I mean, did you know Bill Verdon from the Pirates organization? He was
I knew him as a player.
Okay.
Because he was a great center fielder.
Sure.
I mean, he could go get him.
Yeah.
And his first year, he was Rookie of the Year or something like that with the Cardinals, I think, when he came up.
Okay.
But he never really hit real well after that. But he hit decently,
right.
270, something like that, for the Pirates. But he could really play center field and he could run. And he was a hard-nosed player. And when I was coming to the Astros, sure. I thought, man, that's the perfect guy I wanted to play for.
Right.
And it took a while before I got to play for him.
Sure.
But he was big on conditioning. I'll tell you, we were the best conditioned team in Major League Baseball. But we seemed to always get off to slow starts.
Right.
And the Dodgers were the Dodgers.
Right. And
we'd be 6 games out, 10 games into the season, and they'd be coming out of the blocks doing well. But, I learned, you learn from other people's mistakes.
Right.
For me, Bill wanted us to hit live pitching, get used to it. Mm-hmm. But he wouldn't let the pitchers throw with the screen. in spring training. Sure. He wanted them to get used to fielding the ball.
Right.
Well, the pitchers didn't want anything hit back at them to get hurt.
Yeah.
So nobody got anything out of it. The pitchers threw everything inside so they wouldn't get hurt. Anything out over the plate, they might, I think one day Bull hit Ken Force with a line drive, and that was it. The word got out,
Yeah.
So we really didn't get anything to swing at.
Right.
And another thing, he was a stickler on fundamentals, which he should be, but you get like 2 bunts, a hit and run, and 6 swings.
Okay.
Well, if you didn't get the bunt down, that was one less swing you got. Every bunt you screwed up was one less swing. There were times when guys didn't get a swing because we're facing live pitching. Just came out of the, up northeast somewhere from the winter. You haven't seen live pitching since last summer.
Right.
And all of a sudden you're facing JR and Nuxie throwing knuckleballs. It's like, wait, trying to bunt the ball. And Nolan throwing, So I know what he wanted, guys to get used to that and to concentrate on getting it done so you could get your swings. But in the long haul, we just didn't get our reps swinging, and it showed early in the seasons. So I learned from that when I managed.
I bet.
Yeah.
So what was Burton like to play for as a manager? Because he was known as I understand it, just an old school type of manager.
Yeah, he was. I mean, he was from what I've heard and what I've experienced, when he was a coach, he was unbelievable. He was easy to talk to. He was outgoing, whatever. When he managed, he kind of put a wall up around him.
Okay.
For whatever reason.
Right.
And I remember when I went in the first time I was going to manage winter ball, I went in at the end of the season because I knew he managed winter ball also.
Sure.
And I asked him for his advice. And you know what he told me? And I'll always remember it. He said, don't get too close to your players because it could affect your decision making.
Okay.
Which made sense to me.
Right.
But I think he took it to an extreme.
Right.
Whereas, I got close to my players, but sometimes you got to make a decision for the team,
Right.
And if you're going to hurt a player, in his mind, that's, it's a tough business and you got to do it.
Sure.
But you can explain it to him in a nice way that,
And from what I understand, he would call guys into his office, wherever the situation was, and he would just flat out tell them in no uncertain terms that you weren't very good or this guy's better than you or whatever.
He was a little rough around the red.
Sure.
I remember I went in, I had a nine game hitting streak, something like that. Hottest hitter on the team, and he pinch hit for me with Denny Walling, one of my best friends.
Yeah.
My best friend is, and we were in a pennant race at that time. And, Denny, I think, hit a sac fly or whatever to help us win the game. Mm-hmm. But I was upset because, I think I was the hottest hitter in the league, let alone on the team.
Right.
And I remember after the game, I went in to talk to him about it. I said, Bill, what do I have to do to get a chance to hit in that situation?
Right.
His answer was, get used to it. It's going to happen more often.
Wow.
That's the way he said it. And that's when I wanted to go over the desk
I can imagine.
and let him know how I felt. But I turned around and walked out.
Right.
And from that point forward, when young guys, every spring, Bill would say in his initial talks to the team, my door's always open. If you want to talk about something, come on, you're welcome to come on in. And I would tell all the new players and all the young guys, you better think twice before you go in, because you may not like what you hear.
Yep, absolutely. So what did you take from? So in that vein, what did you take from his managerial style, and what did you not take with you when you managed?
Well, conditioning. I thought conditioning was really important. He was really good with that. Uh-huh. I think he used his bench pretty well. He was consistent. That was one thing that Bill was. He was very consistent. I think your players have to know that you're going to be consistent with what you're doing and how you affect the game.
Sure.
But I also learned, to be more open to the players.
Right.
Through his not being that open.
Right.
I mean, that was just his style.
Sure.
And it was funny. One day, Terry Poole and we got rained out in Philly.
Okay.
And I had a friend's rent a car to use. And we were down at the front desk, and we were asking the person behind the desk where a place we'd go for dinner. And Bill and Gene Coleman, our strength and conditioning coach, were right there, and they were looking for a place to eat. And I figured, well, I'll ask them if they want to come with us. I figured, Bill would say no. I'm not going to be with the players, on an off night here. Well, lo and behold, he says, yeah, we'll go with you.
Well,
I remember TP gave me an elbow in the ribs, like, whoa, what you ruined our night. Well, we went out to eat, and Bill was the life of the party. I mean, he was telling stories about his playing days. It was the most fun evening I ever had with Bill and Gene Coleman. It was great. The next day, TP and I are walking down the street in Philly, and here comes Bill the other way, and he just walks right past us. Didn't even say hello.
Right on brand. You're right on brand, right?
And TP says some things never change. So that's just the way he was.
Oh man, what a character. So what was it like to play in the Dome, and you had to maybe adjust to playing on the turf with the seams with the way the Astrodome field was constructed and the AstroTurf, and then with the crowd noise and those type of things.
And the air conditioning units.
And the AC, sure.
They were blowing straight in from that big exploding scoreboard that we used to have.
Sure.
So, from right center, left center, if you didn't crush the ball, and I mean crush it,
right,
you weren't hitting it out.
Right. And
only like maybe one or two hitters on each team had the power to go dead center.
Sure.
And it was the AstroTurf. You had to get used to playing. Our AstroTurf was different than every other AstroTurf because it was on dirt.
Right.
You remember the rodeo they had every winter. So they just laid the turf on top of that, right, and it wouldn't be snug on the dirt in a lot of places. So it'd be a soft spot, okay, and that's why it was tough fielding ground balls in the Astrodome. You had to really stay with it, and the seams. They had the seams around the dirt areas. Yeah, you could lose a lip if you weren't careful.
That makes TP's 993 Major League record fielding percentage even more impressive.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, TP, he was solid. I got to play with a lot of great players and great teammates, but the Dome was different. It was tough to hit for power, and what it did, it taught me to hit the ball on the ground more.
Okay.
Because I wasn't going to leave going center to right center. Okay. So I worked on I actually spent a whole winter hitting the ball the other way until I got 2 strikes. Okay. And I worked on that mostly when I had a man on first base. That big hole was on that side.
Sure.
And I tried to hit that hole. And the key was getting on top of the ball because your swing starts low and comes up through the zone.
Right.
And if you don't stay tall on the backside going that way, you'd fit a lazy fly ball or a pop-up in the infield. Yeah. So I really worked hard on getting on top of the ball and hitting it that way, and it really helped me. I hit over 400 that year in winter ball, and it came to the point that I remember shortstops used to switch when I came up, and they know maybe a hit and run might be in order. Yeah. They'd have the shortstop cover rather than the second baseman.
Okay.
And so I kind of got wind of that and start trying to pull the ball through that hole short too. But
there you go.
That was a guessing game.
Yep.
But learn to hit the ball on the ground, hit line drives, because there's a lot of room in the outfield. Right. And you hit it on the turf, you can get it in the alley in a hurry.
Well, and even let me share a personal story here just for a second. So it's 1979, and it's the first week of September. Giants are in town, and it's late in the game. There's I think there's one on, one out. Johnny the Master comes up. He nails one. He crushes one somehow out to center. Jeff Leonard can't round it up. and I can still hear him crashing into the wall because it was such a loud thud in there. Pull, TP rounds it up. He throws it back in. He throws it into Craig Reynolds because it's such a long throw. So you had two cutoffs.
Oh, yeah.
So he throws it to Reynolds, then to Landestoy, and then home. And then he made it by an eyelash. But it was an exciting play. I mean, he got it, but not by much. But it was an exciting play. And I share that just to express what a large park the Astrodome was and how expansive it was.
Yeah, I can't remember. Was it 408 or something like that, or 4? It was 412 or something, dead center.
408, yeah.
I believe. But with the air conditioning, like I said, it was a long way out there. For Jimmy Wynn to hit all the home runs he did, I mean, if he played in another ballpark, he would be up there with all the home run records because the toy cannon was something special.
Did you ever go up to the upper deck where he and Doug Rader hit those home runs?
Oh yeah,
you see how far that was?
Yeah, that's in another atmosphere. Yeah, that's unbelievable up there. That hit a ball up there, but very few people did go up there. I remember the Bull in the playoffs went up there on us.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So was there? So speaking of stadiums, so how important was it to when you went into another stadium, maybe that you weren't really familiar with, hadn't played there a whole lot? How important was it to know those dimensions, or to get out there and get a little work in before the game started?
That's why we always had early hitting. When we went on the road, first day in, we'd have like 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock. We'd get the field for an hour, and that's when you would get out and, if you were an infielder, get the ground balls and everything, and then see the foul lines to see how much foul room you have for a pop-up along the sidelines.
Right.
But I remember Tony Gwynn, when he would come into the Astrodome, he would throw balls off our scoreboard out in right field and see the way that would bounce off it and get an idea of where the dead spots were and where it would bounce from there. So, the good outfielders would do their homework.
Absolutely.
Sometimes if they didn't do their homework, it cost them a game.
I bet it would, and that just speaks to why someone like Tony Gwynn was a Hall of Famer.
Yep,
absolutely. So with stadiums still, was there a favorite stadium or ballpark that you particularly like to play or manage in?
Wrigley Field, I love to play in.
Sure.
Yeah, the ivy on the walls reminded me of Ford's Field, the stadium that I grew up going to the Pirates, watching them play. Sure. But the fans there are right on top of you.
Right.
And back then they were pretty rabid and a lot of fun. They'd throw the ball back if you hit a home run in a game back then. But I just loved the ballpark. I saw the ball well there. That the ivy on center field, the thing they had out there in center, you could see the ball really well. But on days when the wind's blowing in, it wasn't a great ballpark to play in.
I can
because
imagine.
You could hit a bomb and see the outfielder running in on it.
So how did that compare to playing in Candlestick with the same thing?
Same thing, basically, but Candlestick you could set your watch to. I think it was like 2 p.m. the winds would pick up.
Gotcha.
So in the 11 o'clock and 12 o'clock when you were taking batting practice, it was beautiful.
Sure.
I mean, what a shock. You're out there, it's a beautiful day, you're throwing BP, you're taking BP, getting ground balls, and then around 1:30 or 2, something like that, here comes the wind coming in off the bay.
Yeah.
And I mean, we used to call it the hawk. The hawk was out, man. And you could see major league infielders look embarrassed. The ball would be hit to an outfielder and the shortstop would catch it.
Oh, yeah.
But you'd see the shortstop would start running out and all of a sudden it put the brakes on, turn in reverse and running back in. And I got one, my rookie, when I was with the Pirates, I'm playing third base and Willie McCovey's up.
Oh, wow.
And the hawk's out. The wind's blowing from right field straight in. Towards home plate.
Oh, man.
And we got the shift on. I'm the only guy on the third base side of second base playing shortstop. So Willie hits this ball off the bat. I say, oh, that's down the left field line. I just drop my head and take a first few strides and I look up and there's no baseball. You talk about a panic. I look and now I look back in towards the dugout and the ball's going that way. Now I make a left-hand turn, and I'm coming down the track, which is in foul territory, right in front of our power dugout, and I lay out and I make a shoestring in the top of my web catch. And that's everybody in the dugout cracked up. But I mean, that ball was down the left field line, and it ended up right in front of our dugout.
That's a heck of a play you made.
Well, I mean, I was pretty thrilled that I made it, but if I hadn't looked up when I did, it would have just dropped. Right. The catcher never even went for it because he thought it was down the left.
Right.
And it was probably an easier play for him just running over in front of the dugout.
Sure.
But that's the way it was. You hit a ball in the left center or out in the right, the wind would just knock it down. I mean, and for Mays to hit all those home runs playing a Candlestick, incredible, just incredible.
He was a pretty strong guy.
Yeah, he didn't cheat himself.
Oh, heck no.
I remember I played in an old timers game with him when I first retired, and I got to shake his hand, and his hand just swallowed my hand up. That's how big his hands and fingers were.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was a thrill just to shake his hand.
Oh man.
Say hey.
He was a great player.
Oh, he was.
He was a great player with all those home runs and the catch in the World Series.
What a catch, huh?
Yeah. Not going to see too many of those.
Yeah, we'll be seeing that forever.
So let me ask you, speaking of the World Series, just taking it back for a second, were you at the 1960 World Series game when Mazeroski hits the walk-off?
No, I just came home from school. I was in school and watching it on TV.
Okay.
And I told my mother, I said, see, Maz could hit a fastball. Huh? He has problems with the break and stuff.
Sure.
And I'm pretty sure, is it Stafford or somewhere, or Tracy Staller or whatever, he was pitching for the Yankees.
Okay.
And he got behind him 2-0.
Right.
And I said to my mother, he may hit a home run here, Mom. And I swear to God, man, he hit that ball. And my whole neighborhood went. Everybody was outside jumping up and down. I mean, all across Pittsburgh. And the next day they had like a parade downtown.
Yeah.
And one of my relatives took me to it. And they were in these convertibles coming down.
Yeah.
And I got to shake Elroy Face's hand.
Yeah.
And I didn't wash it for about 2 or 3 days after that. But that was great. That Pittsburgh it was alive then. That was what a wonderful feeling that was. Championship club.
I bet. That's good stuff. That is good stuff. So let me talk about. Let me move on here for a second to some of your Astros teammates, and I want to ask you about some of the nicknames. So we talked about the Bull, Bob Watson, Trout, Roger Metzger, Cool Pool, Terry Poole, and you mentioned before the Rat, Rafael Landestoy. And I wanted to ask you just a little bit, or just in general, how do baseball players get their names?
Get those nicknames?
Yeah, get those nicknames.
Well, I think Trout, probably because he loved to fish.
Sure.
I think that was probably how Trout got his,
Is it something that the player does or something about
sometimes,
the name? Right?
Sometimes it is. Like Scoop Oliver.
Right.
Al Oliver.
Sure.
He played first base originally. Right. And he's scooping it out of the dirt, so they called him Scoop.
Okay.
And that stuck on him,
right.
Stuck with him. Let me think of some more names, like...
Pops, Willie Starr.
Cole Poole. He was just cool.
Yeah.
He was cool as the other side of the pillow, I mean, he was just that cool of a player,
Yeah.
I don't know if he ever got dirty, he was like...
we didn't have to get fielded every time.
He was like Garvey, Steve Garvey. That's what we used to... He'd slide and he wouldn't get dirty. He was Mr. Perfect.
Mr. Clean.
Yeah. But, I'm sure that everybody got their nicknames for reasons. Well, Rafael Landestoy, I think it was just... he was just small, and the guys just called him Rat.
The way he just
the way he moved and whatever. That was good.
And we talked about Roger Metzger a little bit. That you mentioned before in another conversation we had that you played with a Hall of Fame shortstop in another city, but that Metzger was better than any of those other guys that you played with.
Yes.
And can you talk a little more about what made him so special in that way?
Well, first of all, I don't know if anybody knew how strong his arm was.
Okay.
Trout had a cannon. He really did. And to prove that, he ended up playing shortstop in the major leagues with two of his fingers.
Right.
He had a terrible accident over the offseason, and there he is throwing with parts of his fingers and throwing to first base.
And he's hitting as well.
Yeah, in San Francisco when he was towards the end of his career there. That's an amazing thing to say about it. But he had great range, he had quickness, and he studied the opponents. He knew their tendencies, where they're going to hit the ball. And like I said, turn a double play, he'd put it right there every time. Boom, right there. Right. You never had to reach behind you. Never had to reach down over your head. It was chest high, boom, right there.
Right
every time.
And you're turning to first.
And like I said, he had great range and fundamentally sound.
Yeah.
And that's where, I played with Ozzie Smith. And I mean, obviously, people probably say he's the greatest shortstop defensively. And that's because he did things acrobatically.
Right.
I mean, he was a specimen physically.
Sure.
But Trout was more fundamentally sound.
Okay.
Ozzie would jump up in the air to throw the second part of the double play. And sometimes because he did that, he didn't have a whole lot on the throw, and the guy would beat it at first. Bang, bang, and be safe.
Right.
Trout, he'd come across that bag.
Never happened.
Here comes a BB. He's throwing the seed to the first base. Never threw it off balance. Just picture perfect.
There you go.
Yep.
Very good. Very good. So in 1979, you managed in the winter leagues with the Vaqueros de Bayamon, Puerto Rico team, where you had and correct me if I have the wrong team here, but is this when you had guys like Darrell Evans there?
I played with Darrell Evans.
You played with him, okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
I played with he was a character. And I played with Griffey. Yeah. Griffey Sr.
Senior, sure.
And Dan Dreesen.
Yeah.
I mean, we had some great players on it. And that's what I loved about playing winter ball, because you got a chance to play alongside opponents that you play against during the regular season.
Yeah.
And pitchers, a lot of pitchers from other clubs that you got to know and to face. They pitched on other teams down there, so it would give you an edge if there's a young player that was on AAA trying to get to the big leagues. You may have faced him all winter long, and now he came to the big leagues to pitch against your team, like the Astros.
So you know him a little bit.
So I could tell everybody what the guy had.
Right.
Back then, we didn't have all the films on all the pitchers and everything. Yeah. And I could tell them, hey, this is what he throws. This is what he likes to throw. And it was an edge that you had facing him. Plus, it helps your teammates prepare for the game.
Sure.
So, but winter ball, to be honest, I mean, this is hard to say, but I may have enjoyed winter ball more than playing in the big leagues. That's how much fun it was.
It seems like there's some different elements to it that you wouldn't have had in the majors.
The fans, the fans. I mean, you talk about rabid fans.
Yeah.
Every stadium you went to, I mean, they were going crazy for their team, and there'd be fights in the stands, and they're betting on every pitch. I mean, it was something to behold. They would be hanging from the light towers, kids, just to see the game. That's how much they love the sport.
Sure.
And we used to sell out. My first couple of years at Bayamon, they had a roll-away tarp.
Right.
That was unheard of in winter ball. We had that, and but the stand, it was just a new ballpark. So every night we sold out.
Okay.
And our side of the stands would be for us. The other side, it would be our opponents.
Right.
And I mean, it was just exciting. The playoffs down there, it was life and death. I mean, every game was, the fans were into it. They traveled to and from in cars. Everything was, you were there within hours.
Right.
But I just loved it. The fans were they loved it when you gave your total effort.
Right.
If you jaked it, I saw a couple guys that went through the motions. They booed them right off the island.
Yeah.
Because they know when you're not putting out.
They know they've seen enough baseball.
Yep.
So was that it's winter league, but what was the kind of the structure of the season? Is it November, December at that time?
Yeah, it started like in October.
Okay.
Yeah, late mid October, Okay. You know, like you go down for a week of batting practice and taking ground balls to your team. Okay. And I'm trying to recall, I think you have 6 imports on each team.
Okay.
So from major league teams or from AAA teams, you could. Right. And you had a working agreements usually with 1 or 2 major league teams. Right. Each team down there. So they would recruit. You know, when I got to the Pirates, Jose Pagan was our AAA, was our minor league. Was our winter ball manager. Okay. So he recruited me to come play. Because I wasn't getting to play much, you know, on the Pirates, but he liked what he saw. He wanted me to come play for him in winter ball, and that's how he got Dreesen and, you know, Griffey and those guys. They were just young guys at the major league level and just, you know, up and down type thing. Right. And that's how you got a chance to show what you could do. Plus, for me, it gave me an edge because we were finished, and the playoffs are over. It's in February. Right. We turn right around, go to spring training. A week or 2 later, I'm in playing shape. You know, I've been facing pitching, and I'm ready to go. Whereas everybody else who didn't play winter ball, they're coming back just starting out.
Right, they're starting off from
slow. They're trying to get their timing, trying to get their conditioning. Yeah. You're in playing shape. You're ready to go.
Hit the ground running.
And I think that's what kept me in the big leagues all those years.
Well, that was a big advantage for you then.
Yeah, I played 4 years. In the 5th year, I would have played, but I broke my finger the last month of the season with the Astros. Right. And my eligibility expired after that year. Okay. And that's when I started managing winter ball. Okay. The same team I played for, the GM, recognized the fact that I might want to get into managing. And since I wasn't allowed to play, I knew the league inside out because I played 4 years in a row. Sure. And some guy by the name of Boggs, they got him to take my place the year I couldn't play. I guess he did okay. Right.
Well, you beat me to the punch there. So I was going to also ask you how did managing that team come about, and did you think that managing that not only there but down the road might be in your future too?
Yeah, that was something I was thinking about, maybe hoping that maybe I could line up when at the last part of my playing career. I was hoping to get the word out my last year, you know, to the third base coaches because I was playing third, and coaches from other teams, you know, say, hey, this is going to be my last year. If you need a minor league manager, you know, I'd be interested. But they beat me to the punch. You know, I was only in about 10 days in the show before Whitey gave me the heave-ho. So, but Bobby Valentine hired me as a coach, you know, a month later. Yeah. So that's what really helped me. But managing in the minor leagues, I mean, in winter ball, I think really was a stepping stone for me. Because we were very successful too. That helps when you win.
when it takes care of a lot of things, right? Yeah. Very good. Very good. So let me ask you about this one. So it's 1980 with Astros, and it's getting a little bit late in the season. Your legs start to wear down a little bit on you, and Earl Campbell had, I guess, taken a page out of Joe Namath's book, and I mean, not for support, but he used pantyhose, I think, to keep warm. But your teammates resorted to calling you Mrs. Howe. Yeah. in the locker room. So I'm going to blame Joe Namath for this, but I have to ask if they actually worked or.
I guess they didn't hurt, but it was a little embarrassing putting them on. Yeah, I took a ribbing on that one, but my legs were bothering me so much. I figured I got to try something, you know.
Anything's going to work.
But it was my Achilles on both my heels. Okay. Were just inflamed, and I played that year mostly on taking, you know, painkillers the whole year. I mean, it was no fun. Yeah. Each morning I was walking like a cripple when I get out of bed and had to kind of get them moving a little bit before. But I think taking those pain pills kind of messed my stomach up after that.
They sure will.
Yeah. Taking them for so long, I have trouble taking those kind of things now.
Sure. So was that something that just resulted from playing on the turf so much?
It was actually a winter ball. You know, we had like a 3 steps coming up out of the dugout. Okay. And I'd be standing the whole whole game basically. And a few times late in the game, I would come firing out of the dugout to argue a call somewhere. And each time it was, it grabbed me like I tore my Achilles slightly.
Okay.
Yeah, my gastroc muscle, wherever that is. That was it. And then I didn't want to get surgery on it because, I'd be missing playing time.
Right.
And as long as I could take the pain, I'd play. So
I mean, that's a long recovery from an Achilles. I mean, 40 years ago, that's a lot different than today.
Yeah, right. Exactly. If you recovered at all.
Oh man. Well, let me ask you a little more about the 1980 team. So in the clubhouse, you had guys like your friend Denny Walling, Jose Cruz, Dave Smith, Vern Rule, Cesar Cedeno, Frank Licordi, and Dave Bergman, to name just a few.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that team in that clubhouse a little bit?
It kind of reminded me of my pirate clubhouse when I first came up.
Yeah.
The confidence we had.
Yeah. We
really believed in ourselves. We finally had come to the point where we realized we were ready to win.
Right.
And when I first got there, we were taking it on the chin with regularity, and then Tal Smith did a great job of acquiring some talent. Obviously, a guy named Nolan Ryan.
Yeah.
J.R. Richard came into his own.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, J.R. had the stroke that year, so that was a downer for that season. But the pitching staff that he put together, Joaquin Andujar, Vern Roll, who stepped in after J.R. went down, did a tremendous job. I mean, so we had a great pitching staff. Our bullpen with Licordi, Zambito, and Smith. Yeah. Those three guys are top of the line. Yeah. I mean, if we had a lead after 6 innings,
forget it.
We felt like we were taking it to the house.
Yeah.
This game's over. And they did a great job. And we knew that coming into the postseason, that's what we needed, pitching.
Yeah.
Pitching's the name of the game, and we had it. So it was just a matter of, getting the job done. But we had injuries in the postseason. Cesar.
Yeah.
Blowing his ankle out, hitting the bag wrong. It just seemed like something always seemed to go wrong, and it just wasn't meant to be.
Right. Great seasons for sure. But I want to ask you about the 163rd game of the season, the 1980 season. It's October the 6th, and you have a big day at the plate. You have 4 RBI, 2 of which came on a 2-run single. And then you also had a clutch 2-run home run off of Dave Goltz, who at the time you described as having thrown you a hanging hook. Can you walk us through that at bat a little bit and what that if that was a pitch that you were looking for at the time?
Yeah, when I was up, he got the count to trying to think exactly what the count was. I think it was 1-2.
Okay.
Had me 1-2. And he threw me a curveball that started at a little above the strike zone, and he fooled me. And it broke into the top part of the strike zone.
Okay.
And I kind of dipped down a little bit.
Okay.
And Doug Harvey was a home plate umpire, and Joe Ferguson was the catcher.
Yeah.
And Harvey says, "Ball." I couldn't believe it. I knew it was strike 3, and Fergie knew it was strike 3, and Fergie went ballistic. He's yelling at Doug, you can't miss that pitch. That's strike 3. Let's go. And I remember I stepped out of the box and I kind of looked back at Harvey, and he said, "Art, don't take that pitch again." and I swear it was almost the identical pitch. He threw the next pitch, and I hit it out of the ballpark to left center. And when I crossed home plate, Fergie was still screaming at him. And I said, "I didn't." It just kept going. Oh, jeez.
Oh, man. So you also mentioned that you celebrated a little bit on the home run trot, but really only because they had done the same thing in the previous 3 games to force the playoff.
Well, they had come back in the 9th inning to tie games that we had to lead in, and then beat us in extra innings each time.
Right.
And I don't think I did any. I was on cloud 9 running around those bases. I was probably one of the faster home run trouts you ever saw. But I never felt the ground under my feet, I'll tell you that.
I'm just on cloud nine, I bet.
Yeah. That's the kind of moment that you wish everybody in the world could experience.
Right.
Seriously. I was on cloud nine, and that's about as happy as I've ever been as a player, for sure.
Very good. Very good. What a great moment.
Yeah.
So let me ask you too about so in the same vein with the Astros and the Dodgers, can you talk about the intensity of the rivalry in late 70s and early 80s?
Oh yeah, I mean, I still remember CeCe going into Yeager. You know, he went airborne with both feet because they were allowed to block the plate back then.
Yeah.
And CeCe's coming a mile a minute, coming around third, and Yeager's blocking home plate, and CeCe went airborne, and he just wiped Yeager out. Oh. And I mean, I think they had to pick up pieces of Yeager all around home plate, and he was safe. And
Steve was a pretty big guy.
Oh yeah, he was tough son of a gun, and CeCe wiped him out at the plate, and there was no love lost between us and the Dodgers,
right?
Because they were our thorn in the side for so many years, and we finally got there and were able to beat them. It was sweet, obviously, to finally win our first division championship and to do it in Dodger Stadium to boot.
Yeah,
but it cost us big time. Because it cost us Joe Niekro.
Right.
Joe, that was his 20th win of the season.
Right.
He would have started the playoffs for us. He was our ace that year, 20-game winner. And because he pitched that game, he could only pitch one game against Philly, which he beat like 1-0.
Right.
And they would have never touched Joe the way he was throwing the ball that year.
Yeah.
And so instead of having him pitch 2 games in that series, we only got him to throw 1.
Right.
To me, that was a difference in that series.
Right, and then that was a 5-game series.
Plus, JR wasn't available. So those 2 pitching situations cost me a ring.
That's pretty. Well, I mean, that's a pretty critical thing that happened, though.
Tell me about it.
Yeah.
I don't think people realize how much that hurt us, because the very next day we started the playoffs.
Right.
We flew up to Philly and went, the next afternoon, we went to the ballpark and start the first game of a 5-game series, best of 5.
So you flew out that night after the win?
After the win.
Okay.
Got there in the early morning hours.
Yeah.
Slept fast. We always said sleep fast. And went right to the ballpark and ended up losing that first game, but came back,
Yeah. Yeah, what a series! I mean, it's so 4 of those 5 games went to extra innings. So can you talk about a little more maybe about how tough of a series that was?
It was, first of all, it's the loudest I ever heard the Dome.
Sure,
our fans were just unbelievable.
Yeah,
couldn't ask for more support or better support. One side of the stadium would yell Houston,
right.
The other side would yell Astros.
Yeah.
I mean, it was reverberating. You were shaking. Your body was vibrating. It was so electric. That's what it was. And to experience that here in Houston at that time was really thrilling and exciting for everybody. But each game came down to, the extra innings. It could go either way. And there was one crazy game where, the umpire, the commissioner overruled the call on the
fifth. It was game 4, and so
Vernerol was pitching.
Right. So in that instance, he fields the comebacker, and then assuming that in that moment he's caught it, you double off the runner at first.
Yep.
And then you run the ball. You've got the wherewithal to run the ball down to second.
I was going to throw it, but I figured I saw the guy who was on second all the way to third.
Right.
Why throw it? Accidentally throw it into left field.
Exactly.
I'm going to run it down there.
Yeah.
So I ran it down, stepped on it. Right. Triple play, inning over.
Right.
And then all of a sudden they're all getting together. What's going on here?
Right.
And they went over to the commissioner and they ruled that he short hopped the ball.
Right.
And because it took so long for me to get the second, I guess they said he could have gotten back or something like that.
Right.
So what do you mean? I could have. If he was coming back, I would have fired it to second, get the triple play that way.
Exactly.
But when I didn't have to throw it, why not? Otherwise, so that's what he ruled, that You know, it was a double play, but not a triple play.
Right.
And that was the only thing it couldn't have been.
Right.
Because it was either 1 out or 3 outs.
Right.
Because once he threw to me, the guy was standing on first.
Right.
So the runner's out, but he's safe coming back.
Right.
And the guy on second would have been safe, you know, because there's no force play there.
Right.
So, I mean, they totally screwed that call up.
Right.
Totally.
Right.
So, and then later there was a shoestring catch in right field or no catch that they called a catch, and then they overruled it, called it a safe. It was a double. They had those 2 calls were all messed up. That was an extra innings, I think, and the Phillies scored runs on that. I don't know. But it was a seesaw battle that last game, and heartbreaking to lose it. It was the only time in my career I saw 25 guys crying in a clubhouse, and it was heart-wrenching, to be honest with you, because we honestly believe we had a better team. We had a better team than the Phillies. And Greg Gross was my roommate my first year here in Houston. Now he was with the Phillies, and they went on to play Kansas City in the World Series. Mm-hmm. And he called me halfway through the World Series. He says, Art, this is disappointing. I said, what are you talking about? He said, the World Series to me was our series. He says, this isn't even exciting. He says, I've waited my whole life to play in a World Series, and it's down. He says there's no excitement playing this series compared to playing you guys.
Yeah, and that's and I think that's pretty much the consensus with that series. Like NLCS, World Series, whatever. Like that 1980 NLCS was one of the best series ever in baseball history, playoff history.
For sure. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
Just the wrong team won.
Yep. And, you know, I think it would have happened had it been a 7-game series, but it's only a 5-game series back then.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, definitely. Because we have more depth in a pitching staff than they did.
Right. And then you get Necro back for a second game, potentially in game 6 or 7.
Exactly.
At that point. So, yeah, but that was an electric year for sure. And I was 10 years old. I was in the outfield with my family on the front row and left.
Oh, is that right?
Behind Luzinski and Cruz and everybody. And you had a big late inning triple to keep the Astros in the game.
Yeah.
Right, at that point.
It actually put us up 5-2.
Right.
And Verdon took me out of the game then.
Wow. Yeah.
2 outs, runner on third. Mm-hmm. Why pinch run for a guy? What do maybe he did it so I could get a hand because of the hit, you know.
Right.
But me and Joe Morgan, he took us both out that inning.
Right.
The 2 veteran guys, and he put, you know, who did he put? He put Rat at second.
Yeah.
And he put Dave, oh, jeez, good friend of mine, left-handed. He went down on one knee on the ground ball by Unser, and it bounced over him. I never went down on him. I was playing for Dave Bergman, who was a very good defensive first baseman, but I wouldn't have played it the way he did. I mean, I would have taken it in the face before it went down the right field line.
Sure.
Because it hit the seam, and it did bounce over him. Right. But he was down on one knee, and you know, you don't get down on one knee. You know, you get, you know, you're upright a little bit, but then you could straighten up and take it off your chest.
Right, but if you put
then
that,
you could flip it to the pitcher cover, and the inning's over.
But you put that knee on the ground, that takes you away from. From doing
you can't get up.
Yeah.
So
not easily. Not easily.
But I remember me and Joe were in the clubhouse just fuming. He was livid that we weren't on the field. Yeah. That's the way it goes.
So in that game, so they've gotten to Nolan a bit. The game's tied and everything else. How tough of a call is it to maybe in that situation to take the ball from a future Hall of Famer at that point? You know, it's a big game. I mean both teams, great teams. Game 5, they've scored. They've tied it up.
Yeah. I think the only question we had at that point, I might be mistaken, but he brought Ken Forsch in, who was a starting pitcher.
Right.
When we had Sambito, Smith, and LaCourte,
right,
who were used to coming in out of the bullpen.
Right.
And I think that was one of the questions us as players had.
Sure.
Why Ken, when he wasn't ever used as a bullpen guy?
Right.
And obviously some more runs were scored.
Right.
But we came back and tied it, and it went extra innings, and eventually we came up on the short end of the stick. It was an exciting game, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But we didn't quit, and TP was unbelievable. TP just kept getting big hit after big hit.
Yeah.
I mean, he was definitely the player of the series. I know, at least on our side, hands down.
He hit over 500 in that series.
Oh, yeah, he raked.
Yeah.
He had 12 or 14 hits or something like that. Something crazy. But on the other hand, their second baseman wore us out.
Manny
Trio.
Yeah. Great player also.
Yeah, he had a great playoff.
Yeah.
Okay. But we had a play at the plate. I'm thinking of that series where Pete Rose ran through a stop sign, and he was out from. He had just started his slide when the ball got to Bochy, and he couldn't field it.
Yeah, I think that
came up on him a little bit.
Yeah, it came. I think it came in on a hop.
Yeah,
and he didn't quite get it, and Pete was coming down the track. So,
yep. And that's when you're allowed to run into the catcher.
Yeah,
and he did.
Yeah. Oh man. Okay, so let's go to 1981. So for Nolan Ryan's fifth no-hitter, Terry Pull, no surprise, makes a great catch in that game to keep the no-hitter alive. And then you seal the deal with a clean field of Dusty Baker's grounder, and you make that throw across the first to your pal Denny Wall, and you close out the game. What was that excitement like on the field, and did that feel like as much of a team accomplishment as it did an individual accomplishment for Nolan?
Yeah, because of TP's catch. Without that, he doesn't have the no-hitter.
Right.
But, everybody was on their feet the last couple innings, every pitch.
Sure.
And the funny thing was, I think I fielded a pop-up once during the game. I hadn't had a ground ball hit to me the whole game.
Right.
And I'm down there at third base thinking, maybe I don't want a ground ball hit to me. But actually, I was saying to myself, if Dusty hits me the ball, I'm going to get in front of it.
Right.
In case if I boot it, it's an error.
Right.
I'm not going to field it to my side, make it look like it was a tough play or whatever.
Yeah.
So he hit it, and lo and behold, it was an in-between hop. And I'm oh, please. And like I said, on our turf, the dirt underneath the turf, you don't know if it's going to hit a solid place or hit something soft.
Right.
But luckily, it took the hop I thought it would. I fielded it, and as soon as I caught it, Denny was still on his way to first base. So I'm saying, I'm not waiting for him to get there. I'm leading him like a down and out pattern. I threw it to the bag, and he got to the bag in time, turned around and caught it. That's why I really didn't fire it. If you see, I kind of threw it almost 3/4 and didn't really fire it across there because he wasn't there yet.
Yeah.
So, but I wanted the ball to definitely beat the runner, so I just kind of flipped it on over there. But I may be mistaken, but one thing I really appreciated was I think Nolan said if the ball was going to be hit to anybody, I wanted it hit to Art. So he felt confident that I would make the play for him.
That's a pretty high compliment.
That was very nice.
Very, very much so. So later in the 1981, in that season, the Astros were in the National League Division Series playoffs because there's a first half winner that year with it being a strike year. So the Dodgers win the first half, Astros win the second half, and then Mr. Clutch, Denny Walling comes up again in a big situation with to win Game 2 on a walk-off hit. Dodgers are a little too much in that series, and we talked a little bit about about not having JR at that time, with him not being in the rotation, but the rotation is still at that point. It's Ryan Sutton, Nepper, Necro, and Rule, if I recall correctly, and that's pretty formidable. But having JR would have been a game changer at that time as well.
JR was the best pitcher in baseball when he had his stroke. He really was.
Yeah.
Nolan obviously has always been a great pitcher, but JR, when guys would come down to first base, they would tell me they would rather face Nolan than JR.
Right.
Because of that nasty slider he had.
Yeah.
Plus, he still had a little bit of a reputation of being a little wild, which helps, And I remember when he was pitching against the Dodgers,
right.
They had almost an all right-handed lineup, and Tommy would never change it.
Sure.
He had two left-handers, two switch hitters. Well, he had Rick Monday, who was the only solid left-handed hitter.
Okay.
Then he had
Reggie Smith,
switch hitter.
Okay.
Those are the only two left-handed hitters in his lineup. And it was like a hot knife through butter.
Sure.
Because JR would just eat them alive. And the only two guys he had to worry about were Monday and Reggie. And sometimes they would get some hits off him, but they were spread out. And he would strike out, 10 guys, 12 guys, and a lot of feeble swings. And
sure.
Yeah. They weren't digging in on him either.
I bet not.
Yeah, he really commanded the ball against the Dodgers. The one team at that time that would give him JR trouble would be Cincinnati, because they had a lot of left-handed hitters.
Right.
Rose, Griffey.
Yeah.
They were just up and down their whole lineup. They had a bunch of lefties, and they gave him trouble. But anybody else in the league, it was over.
It was just lights out. Very good. Very good. So let me talk a little bit about some mindset and some strategy things. So the Astros have allowed you to become a free agent after the '83 season, and then we talked a little bit about your Achilles injury at that time. And can you talk about what you had to do at that time in the off season to get ready for 1984?
Actually, '83 I missed because of my elbow. I had torn the ligaments or whatever, and I had surgery in the off season before that, but it didn't work.
Right.
And then had to have surgery again once spring training started. Trying to throw, it's like an electrical charge going off of my elbow. Right. So they transferred the nerve.
Okay.
And obviously I was going to miss the whole season. So I worked over the winter trying to get that arm going again. And the White Sox actually gave me an opportunity. I went to the winter meetings on my own just to talk to all the clubs that I could and anybody I knew. Tony La Russa was the manager of the White Sox then. Right. And I had played AAA ball with Tony my first year in AAA.
Right.
So with Charleston Charlie. So I knew Tony there.
Sure.
And Tony knew the way I played and whatever. So he gave me an opportunity to make his club in spring training. Well, about 4 weeks through spring training, I guess maybe he realized that there wasn't going to be a spot for me on his club, which I think he really reached out to other teams. And the Cardinals, since I played in the National League and Whitey knew how I played, and they needed a backup to Oberfeld, the third, a right-handed hitter that platooned with him. So they called me over the last 2 weeks of spring training, and I made the team. Minimum salary, major league, but at least I was in the big leagues again.
Right.
And I needed a little over a year to get my full pension of 10 years in the big league. So as it turns out, I got that with the Cardinals. And I thank Whitey for that. I think I got it right to the day almost.
Sure.
And they kept a kid named Vince Coleman over me.
Sure.
He could run a little better than me and hit better at that time. So that was it.
Very good. Very good. So let me ask you about hitting. So as a hitter, what's your focus and your mindset like when you're in the on deck circle? I mean, the game's happening right there, obviously, but what are you thinking about?
Well, early on, when you first get to the big leagues, you look fastball and hit off it. Try to keep your weight back, recognize the pitch, If it's not a fastball, try to stay back as long as you can, because the breaking balls are much slower, so that you can still be in a position to drive the ball and put it in play. But as you play, as I played in the big leagues and got to face the same pitchers over and over again, I always kept a book. I kept a book on every at-bat that I had in the big leagues.
Wow.
And I would write down, after the game was over, the situation, if there was anybody on base, how many outs, and put the pitch selection. First pitch, this, if it was a striker ball, and the whole at-bat. Okay. And because in the big leagues, you go 2-3 months without seeing that same pitcher, and then all of a sudden you face him. Right. Well, you can't remember exactly how he pitched you 3 months ago, because you face so many pitchers in between.
Right, you have so many pitches in a bat.
So I would just sit down before the game and refresh my memory.
Right.
And go over each at bat, how the pitch is and whatever. And lo and behold, I found out that pitchers are creatures of habit.
Yep.
If they get you out a certain way, they're going to continue doing it until you prove you can keep them from getting you out that way.
Sure.
So I became a guest hitter much more later in my career than I did early in my career.
Okay.
And late in my career, I would kind of lay in the weeds, so to speak, for a certain pitch.
Okay.
And because of a certain situation. And lo and behold, more times than not, I would get that pitch. The key was not to miss it.
Right.
And I became a pretty decent hitter, and I could put the bat on the ball pretty good.
Right.
So I would get them. But once I got them, then I found out they start changing their way of pitching to me. So now I got to relearn. That Happy Hooten. I got him once or twice. He used to start me off with a fastball, then go to his curveball, that knuckle curveball, which was nasty.
Sure.
So I finally started laying in the weeds on that first pitch, and it took him deep a couple times. And then all of a sudden, knuckle curveball first pitch. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But that was the fun of it, out thinking the pitcher and figuring out what he was going to do.
That's the whole part of the game. I mean, otherwise you're just. I mean, it's a different discussion here, but otherwise you're just hitting off a batting practice machine.
Yeah.
If I can get it out.
Plus, I helped the younger guys when they came up. Right. First time facing a guy, and I'd give him what I had. Yeah. And this is what he likes to throw. And he said, and I remember Billy Dorn thanked me so many times after. Said, Art, I can't thank you enough, because that's exactly what he threw me in that situation. I was looking for it.
Yeah.
So it makes you feel good when you help the younger guys.
There you go.
Really.
No, absolutely. So let me ask it like this. So when you step in the box, I mean, you talked about what you're trying to do a little bit. You come up, you're trying to hit a fastball, play off that. But can you really wait for your pitch with it? I mean, everyone's a major league pitcher now, right? So can you wait on in any kind of pitch that you prefer to hit, or do you just do what you can with what's thrown?
Well, you learn, when they say there's only like 1 point so many seconds to react to the pitch, and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But as a major league hitter, believe it or not, you can kind of slow it down. Right. And the more you play and the more you hit and the more in the groove you get. If you're in a hot streak, the ball looks big to you. It really does. Right. And you kind of slow things down. Right. And you're not jumping at the ball. Right. And when you're struggling, you're just trying to hit. Your timing's all messed up. You're thinking about where your hands are maybe, and should I stride bigger and then shorten my stride, and then the ball's by you. Right. Yeah. Right. So it's, believe it or not, it's not as fast as it seems to what fans see. Sure. You literally see the spin of the ball. Right. You said, the fastball is going to look different than a slider or a curve. Or the ball backspins coming in at you. Right. The slider, you got like a little dot in the middle of the ball. It's like a nickel dot. And if they throw it properly, physics, you gotta love it. And in the knuckle or the split finger would tumble. It would just have very little rotation. It was tumbling.
Okay.
So you could see that.
Right.
So, I mean, if you were paying attention, you could see that stuff.
Okay.
And that's another problem when you start turning 40, like I did at the end. Your vision starts going, and you couldn't see the spin as well.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So when you're not going well, and you're trying to just hit everything and get any hit to fall in, and how do you focus on just making contact when that situation is there? You're in a little bit of a slump. You're trying to get going again. How do you do that? And then I guess when you are in the midst of a slump, maybe all of a sudden everyone's Ted Williams. They want to give you hitting tips and all that. So how do you stay focused in that time?
Well, you go back to fundamentals, right? And really what you're thinking is up the middle. Yeah, you're going to try to take the fastball up the middle. Okay. That way, if they throw you something off speed, you're going to still be on time. Whether you could hit it to left field, keep it in play. Sure. But if you're thinking pull, like most players do these days, it looks like, and they throw you something soft, you can get fooled very much so and be embarrassed with some of the pitches you swing at. Right. But if you're thinking up the middle, the other way, you're going to wait a little bit more on a fastball. That way, when they do throw you something off speed, you're still going to be on time. Okay. That makes all the sense in the world. So let me ask you this: as a player, if when you're in the batter's box and you're picking up the signals from the third base coach, if you get a signal that's not to your liking or that you disagree with, is that even remotely an option as a player? Not when I played.
Right, exactly.
Well, I'll give you an example. On my hitting streak, my first time up, playing, we got a guy on third base and one out. And we're playing the Padres at the time. And I looked down at third base. I got the squeeze sign. Squeeze. Yeah. First inning or second inning, whatever it was. Well, I'm going to bunt it. Right. So I bunted the ball. I think we scored. I think I got it down. But running hard to first, I blew out my hamstring. Okay. So I stayed in the game because I wanted to keep my streak going. Sure. It was probably, and at the time I didn't know the rules because it was a sacrifice. The run scored. Right. I was thrown out at first, but because there was no time at bat, I could have come out of the game and it wouldn't have been counted as a time at bat, and my streak would still been going. Yeah. But in my mind, I'm thinking I got to stay in this game, try to get a hit, and it was killing me. Oh, man. So I'm at the plate, and I felt like somebody just ripped the back of my hamstring off me. Sure. Trying, and I couldn't even swing the bat properly. But so I took an 0 for 4, but at the time I'm thinking I'm the hottest hitter in the league, and they want me squeezing off this guy. Right. And I got this streak. Well, I bunted. Yeah. And I wish I hadn't at this point, or just say I missed the sign. And did you take a fine for that? Yeah. Right? You get fined. Yeah. Yeah. But I'm a team player. If I'm told to do something, I'm going to do it. Right. Absolutely. And I don't know if Don Leppert was a third base coach, if he accidentally gave it to me without knowing it or whatever. I don't know. He was with you in Pittsburgh as well. Yeah, he was the coach hitting me the ground balls that told me, "Hey, Sonny, get in the outfield." There it is. And here he is coaching for me. Very good. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. That's all right. So there are a lot of different things and books and stories that I've come across in my 52 years, and there's a guy named Greg Pryor, played short for Kansas City for the Royals and the White Sox, and he wrote a book recently in the last couple of years or so, and he recalls a story where he's in the field. I forget which team it is, Kansas City or Chicago White Sox, and he's
he's out there. He's at short, and he gets a signal from the dugout, like hey Pryor, shade over this way a little bit towards the hole. Mm-hmm. Well, he doesn't move, and so the dugout is kind of frantically waving at him, obviously to move over, do what they ask him to do for the situation. So the inning ends. He comes off the field, and then in the tunnel, one of his coaches is about an inch from his nose, and he tells him in no uncertain terms, is he ever to disobey an order from his dugout? And his coach was somebody that played for the Indians that he actually grew up watching and idolizing. Yeah. And so he got the message pretty quickly.
Loud and clear.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Times have changed, though.
Sure.
Well, now they have. I've seen it on TV. They've got little cards on their wrists and flip it open to see where. We used to have team meetings and you're supposed to pay attention and go over each hitter. This is where you play them.
Right.
Now I guess they don't. Maybe they don't have the team meetings. They have these cheat sheets for them.
Oh yeah. Times have changed. Well, let me ask you. So it's 1977. You're at Wrigley, and Mark Lamangelo is pitching, okay, and it's well documented that he had a little bit of a tirade that day, got thrown out of the game, ejection, the whole bit, but he had I watched it, I thought he had a pretty legitimate beef with the umpire. It was Dutch Renner that day. He throws it, what it looks like, just right down Broadway, and so he overreacts in that whole situation. So what's a situation like in that regards? What's a situation like that where a player takes a real exception to something that the umpire has done?
Well, I remember when I was first managing the Astros. Okay. We were out in San Francisco. It was one of my first ejections, I think.
Okay.
And is it Larry? Slider for us.
Anderson,
yeah. I bring him. We got like a 5-2 lead in the bottom of the 7th inning, and I won't say who the umpire was.
I understand. That's just fine.
And Larry never complained.
Sure.
He's throwing boom, slider, catcher not moving his mitt, ball. Right. Oh, no, he ends up walking. And Larry's visibly upset on the mound.
Right.
So I finally, they get a hit and a run scores, and I go out to him. I says, what's going on, Larry? He says, Art, I'm throwing the ball right down Broadway, and he's calling them balls. And Craig Reynolds is playing shortstop for me.
Okay.
And Craig, he's a minister now.
Right.
Craig says, Art, those are strikes, and he's calling them balls. I don't know where he has to throw the ball to get a strike call. So I go back in, finally get out of the inning, but they go ahead.
Right.
So Craig Reynolds leads off for us the next inning.
Okay.
And the first pitch, strike one. And I see Craig step back and say something to the home plate umpire.
Right.
Now the home plate umpire steps in front of Craig, right on standing on home plate, getting in his face.
Right.
Well, I know Craig wouldn't say boo if he saw a ghost, let alone cuss or swear. I think darn might be the worst he ever says. Yep. I come running out, and this gives me my shot, right?
Yeah.
So I said to Craig, what's going on out here? And the umpire says, you see what he said to me? I said, what did he say to you? He says, funny, that was a ball last half inning.
Exactly.
And I says, that's right. And then I got in the guy's face, and I told him the tighter the game got, the tighter, he got. And it gave me the heave-ho. But at least I got my 2 cents worth in. And Will Clark told me, you're right, Skip, when I was walking down the right field line to go to our clubhouse. He said, you're right, Art, he stinks.
Oh, man. So let me tell you, let me relay another story here. So I read the biography, I think it's biography, autobiography. I know I'm not getting that right, but of Catfish Hunter, and he mentions a story where he's a rookie in Kansas City, and he's out there he's out there and he's throwing, and he throws a couple pitches in, and he thinks they're strikes, and umpire, ball. And he's like, oh, okay. And so doesn't really say anything about it, just goes about his business, finishes up, game's over. Well, he sees that home plate umpire in the tunnel. And the umpire says, well, he says, you didn't have any problem with the way I call the balls and strikes? No, sir. And he said, well, so I'm the umpire and I'm going to call it how I want to call it? More or less, I'm paraphrasing. He said, yes, sir, you're the umpire. He said, well, that's great. We're going to get along just fine. Have a great season type of thing. So every time that
from
same
that point
umpire,
forward,
that point forward, he got the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
And so is that maybe a little bit how you have to handle those situations as a manager or a player?
Yeah, I mean, you have to take the heat away from the players, because
right.
I remember when we had like who we had Bagwell, Biggio. They were young.
Yeah.
Louis
Gonzalez.
Yeah. Andujar Cedeno at short.
Sure.
And they're coming back. Art, they're calling strikes. They're not strikes. And I says, hey, don't argue with them. Eventually, they'll start calling it the right way. But this is your initiation.
Right.
To see if you can handle it
right.
and how you're going to react.
Right.
So I know it hurts now, but it'll pay dividends down the road. Just don't show them up
right.
and just swallow it. I see the films. I know they're missing them.
Right.
But eventually, if you play it cool, they're going to start giving you the benefit of the doubt
right.
and know you're a good guy. I'll start calling it. But you got to earn your stripes.
That's it.
And that's the way it is. And
okay.
It shouldn't be that way,
right.
but it is.
Okay. That's interesting to know, but I guess that with what you're telling me, that makes a lot of sense with how they go about it.
Yep.
Very good. So at this point, you finished your playing career in 1985 with St. Louis, and then you go on and you coach with the Rangers from 1986 to 1988. You manage with Astros from 1989, 1993. 1994 is a strike year. You scout for the Los Angeles Dodgers in 1995. And then you also coach with Colorado in 1995. And then you manage in Oakland, 1996 to 2002. New York Mets back to the National League, 2003, 2004. Philadelphia, 2006 as a coach, and Texas as a coach again, 2007 to 2008. So I want to ask, what differences to you, aside from the obvious, from the designated hitter, what differences, if any, are there in the two leagues, the way they operate, or players, anything else?
Well, I think more than anything, for a manager, it was much easier for you to manage an American League team than it was a National League team.
Right.
Because of the double switches
right.
with your pitcher hitting, you pull him when he's losing 1-0 in the sixth
right.
inning. He's throwing a good game. 2 guys on, 2 outs, second and third. Do you let him hit,
right.
or do you try to get a hit and use your bullpen? But
yeah.
So it was much more difficult in those kind of decision-making situations to manage a National League team.
Right.
American League team, you just write the lineup, number one, and you manage your pitching staff.
Right.
You don't, very rarely do you pinch hit during a game, because those are your best 9 hitters you're putting out there.
Right.
And maybe if you're platoon 1 or 2 guys, maybe you pinch hit there.
Right.
But other than that, there's not a whole lot of decision making. It's just when to remove your pitcher and when not to. If he's stinking a place up, you go get him. He's getting them out, you let him pitch. It's much
Pretty
easier. You're almost a spectator sometimes, you feel like, in the American League, rather than really managing a game. Okay.
Very interesting. So let me ask you about the designated hitter. Did you? You just mentioned that it was a bit easier to manage when you had that DH in there, but did you like the spirit of the rule where for the longest time you had the American League, you had the designated hitter starting in 1973, and then but in the National League, obviously you didn't have that. The pitcher had to bat for himself. So did you like that the pitcher had to stand in and bat for himself because he's a pitcher and a hitter?
Yeah. Well, I like the original idea of the designated hitter,
right?
And that was to keep aging superstars in the game,
right?
Great hitters that maybe still could hit but couldn't field, couldn't play a defensive position, weren't healthy enough to be on the field for 9 innings, but could still rake.
Sure.
So that's to me, I think that was the heart of that reason for having a designated hitter in the first place, to keep some of the aging stars still in the game. And I think that was great. It's certainly changed through the years. And when you got young kids DHing, whatever.
Yeah.
In the National League, I liked the way the National League played. I thought it was an incentive for a pitcher to learn how to hit.
Right.
Take some pride in their ability to hit.
Right.
And it also, if you had a pitcher that could hit, he stayed in games longer, gave himself opportunities to win more games because the manager believed, hey, he could still get a hit here, don't have to waste a pinch hitter, and he's pitching well enough that he could still win this ball game.
Sure.
So I like the pitchers that really learned how to hit and became athletes.
Right.
Some of them aren't athletes; they just have a great arm.
Yeah.
They can throw the ball.
Right.
And but to be able to swing a bat and bunt guys, move guys around, take pride in that.
Right.
And in spring training, when I was managing the Astros and the Mets, I had pitchers take a lot of batting practice, and give them the best chance they can to help the team win.
Sure.
Well, I have someone up there who can't even bunt, in the lineup.
Or maybe that doesn't particularly want to.
No, you see them shy away. They're afraid of the ball, and But now that everybody has a DH, it's a different game. So if I was a pitcher that could hit, I'd be a little upset with it.
Exactly.
Except what is the kid from the Angels? He gets the hit anyways.
Ohtani.
Ohtani.
Yeah.
He takes pride in his hitting.
Oh man, does he? Does he? So let me ask, who were some guys that you played with that really did take a lot of pride in their hitting and who were great hitters?
As pitchers. Most of the Pirates, when I first came up, they could swing the bat a little bit.
Right.
I remember Don Drysdale was a very good hitter.
Right.
He could rake, and guys like from back in that age is Bob Gibson could swing the bat a little bit.
Sure.
He could hit. So I'm going back a ways, but they really did swing the bat well. Trying to think on my clubs if any pitchers could really hit.
Yeah.
We tried to get them to swing the bat. Mike Scott put the bat on the ball from time to time. I know he hit a sac fly to win a ball game for us one day. So, I mean, it's important that, they take some pride in that and go up there and at least put the ball in play if at all possible.
Right.
That's another thing that this day and age, they don't realize that, it's home run or strikeout or walk, and putting the ball in play is a valuable weapon because you have a chance to make runners move and move runners up just by putting it in play.
Yeah.
Hit a slow roller to second with a man on first. The guy moves up to second. At least he moved up 90 feet. You didn't strike out, and he's still standing at first base. Now a base hit doesn't score him.
Right.
Base hit now does score him.
Right.
Because you just put the ball in play. It was weak, but it did a job. It moved a runner. Yeah. But doesn't seem to be emphasized too much these days.
No, and all those other nuances with maybe hitting behind a runner or moving the runner over or some.
Well, you have to be able to let the ball travel to hit the ball behind a runner if you're a right-handed hitter, and they yank the ball. It's amazing what I see.
Oh man,
kind of
blows your mind a little bit.
I'll probably be rolling over my grave a few times if they continue to play it this way.
Well, I mean, again, hopefully some of those things kind of come back around at some point. I
don't think so in my lifetime.
Wishful thinking.
Yeah,
wishful thinking. Well, let me ask you. So what is a manager's role like aside from from the obvious? I mean, you're there to make the playoffs and win a World Series every year. So once you're hired, what's your first task aside from selecting the staff, and then when you do select the staff, what criteria did you use in selecting those coaches?
I give them their opportunity to coach.
Okay.
I think if you interrupt them or step on their toes, you hire them for a reason. You
Right.
believe that they know what they're teaching, and that's why the interview process is important.
Right.
You ask them what they are going to teach,
Right.
and if you don't believe in it, you don't hire them.
Right.
But if you believe what they're telling you, and that's what they're going to teach, and you agree with it, you hire them and let them go do their job.
Right.
And you show them that you have confidence in them doing their jobs.
Right.
And what I always did, I told them if they ever needed help, let me know. I'll do the best I can to help out.
Right.
But I'm not going to step on their toes. I'm going to let them do their job
Right.
until I see that we're not getting results.
Sure.
Then I might come in
Right.
and say something. But I give them a chance to do their job, and I think they appreciated that. I think every coach that ever coached for me told me that. It said, thank you for letting me work and do my job.
Very good. Very good. So how important is the front office to a manager? And let me give you the example here. So when you were with the Mets, and correct me if I'm wrong again, but you had 3 general managers in 2 seasons?
Yes.
As your manager there? Can you talk about how important it is to be kind of in alignment with everybody, front office, scouts, and staff, and to get the kind of players in the organization that everybody wants?
Yeah, well, I got hired by one general manager, and I was excited to have an opportunity to work with him because we were both definitely on the same page.
Right.
Well, mid-season, he got fired. And the next general manager, I was on the same page with. And then finally the third one, maybe not so much.
Okay.
Mainly because he kind of came in at the very end of my tenure there.
Right.
But ownership kind of butt in a lot over there
Okay.
with the Mets. And that was not a good situation. So the best thing that happened was for me to leave there.
Sure.
For all parties involved.
Sure.
And but I was looking forward to rebuilding the Mets, because I went in there and they had lost over 100 games the year before.
Right.
And I was known for, helping rebuild organizations.
Right.
And I think we were on our way. In fact, a week or 2 before they fired me, I had a sit down with the owner and told him exactly what I would do for the next season. Yeah. And that's what they did. They fired me, but went ahead with all my advice how to get better. So, and they were. I think they made the playoffs or something next year, or should have anyways.
Well, you won as a manager, you won your 1,000th game there in New York. That was a big achievement for you as well.
Yeah, it was. It was a thrill. And, I don't want to badmouth the Mets. I mean, no. They were a good organization. They did a lot of things really, really well. Mm-hmm. It's just it wasn't a good fit for me for whatever reason. But right. I enjoyed my stay there when I was there. Got to meet some great players. Mike Piazza played for me for a couple of years, right. And quite a great player and a good human being. And Tom Glavine came over there and pitched for me, Hall of Famer. So it was just nice to see the atmosphere. The Met fans are rabid. I mean, they kind of reminded me of winter ball.
Right.
If you don't get the job done, they're going to let you know about it, and maybe to an extreme sometimes. but they love their Mets, and
sure.
Too bad. Well, this year it looks like they're going to be in the postseason. So, and they've got a very good pitching staff. They got a chance.
Yeah,
they've got a chance.
Well, we're going to find out here pretty soon.
Yep.
So, can you take us into the manager's office for just a bit and describe maybe what a typical day is like? Either American or nationally. So maybe you're going to meet with the coaching staff or talk to the starter, see how he's doing, get an update on injuries.
Yeah. Well, first of all, when you come in, you check with your training staff.
Okay.
Make sure everybody's healthy.
Right.
Check the health status of everyone.
Right.
And then you go in and you check your scouting reports.
Right.
Go over all your scouting reports, every single one. Maybe even call your advanced scout if you have a question about, a certain thing he wrote down on the reports or whatever, to clarify it, to make sure you know exactly what he meant and whatever, which makes them feel like they're really helping.
And valued.
And there's a relationship there.
Yeah.
So call him and then get together with the coaching staff and tell them what, how we're going to go about this and that, and let them know how, we're going to play different guys and whatever. And then, the hitting coaches, before we take the field or whatever, hitting coaches sit down with the offense, pitching coach sits down with the pitchers. You'll sit in on either one of those meetings just to, listen to make sure everything's being said that you once said.
Sure.
And so that everybody's on the same page.
Right, exactly.
And then now is that starting pitcher, he could sit down with the pitching coach and the catchers to go over again exactly how you're going to pitch to everybody in their lineup as they come up.
Okay.
So everybody knows exactly what you're looking for.
Right.
So that when the game starts, there's no questions.
Right.
And so then you roll out the balls and hope everybody listened and we're all in the right place. And as a job as a manager is to try to put everybody in a position to succeed.
Right.
That's all you're trying to do. And get, especially players, put them in a situation where they can succeed and they're not going to embarrass themselves.
Right, where they're playing from their strengths,
yes.
obviously.
Yeah. When a certain hitter hits his pitcher well,
right.
And that pitcher's coming in to pitch, you may, have him ready to pinch hit against that guy. Boom.
Okay.
He's going up there, he's feeling confident because he knows he owns him.
Right.
And that pitcher knows he owns him.
Right.
So he's not feeling real good about himself. And those mind games work,
Sure.
So that's what, try to get everybody in the best matchup you possibly can.
Okay. So what are some, are there, I know there's a lot that goes into being a manager, and maybe you almost have to, I don't want to say be a father in the clubhouse or that kind of thing, but are there some behind the scenes things in the clubhouse and I know there are with the organization and a lot of things that as manager you have to kind of handle and deal with as well.
Yeah. Well, first of all, the clubhouse to me, I don't want the players to start walking on eggshells when the manager comes in.
Right.
I want them to feel comfortable with me in the clubhouse. It's their clubhouse.
Right.
My office is my office. The coach's office is their office.
Right.
But the clubhouse is the player's office.
Right.
And they can have fun, do things, goof around.
Sure.
Go into the training room, be comfortable with thing in there, go in for the spread where the food is.
Sure.
All that is all theirs.
That's their domain.
That's their domain. Sure. And I want them to be comfortable with it.
Right.
So when I walk in, I don't want them to say, the skipper's here. We can't keep doing what we're doing. I have fun with them. I'll go in and start goofing around with them. So I want them to feel comfortable. And when the time comes for the game to start, now it's fun and games are over with. Now you're professional. You go to work and you can get the job done. When it's over, we can have some fun again. Especially after we win.
It's time to work. It's time to work, and time for then playtime is.
And if we lose, it's not the end of the world. Sometimes, after a certain amount of time has elapsed after a game, I let them play a little music if they want. Then
sure.
But immediately afterward, no, I don't want to hear music if we just lost.
Right. You're almost. You don't want to make it look like you're celebrating.
Yeah.
Or having fun.
Yeah, having fun.
Very good. Very good. So you mentioned in your Western chapter of Pennsylvania Sports Hall of Fame speech that you played with over 70 Major League Baseball Hall of Famers.
Yep.
And so I wanted to ask, how did those talented players assist you or influence you in your career? Just with who they were as players and people.
Well, mostly in their work ethic.
Yeah.
They didn't become superstars
right.
without paying a price, and getting to work, like in spring training, Willie Stargell, his work ethic is impeccable. He worked on his defense.
Right.
He worked on his offense. Even though he was a great hitter, he still kept working at it, fine-tuning it.
Right.
You can never be satisfied with what you've done or
Right.
what you've accomplished. You can always be better. That's
Sure.
that's the approach you want to keep doing it. And my AAA manager told me that, he says, Art, as hard as it's been for you to get to the big leagues,
right.
it's even harder to stay. And that was the best advice I ever got as far as, playing in the big leagues.
Sure.
And I always took that to heart.
Yeah. Kept you going and kept you working, I would imagine.
Yep.
So in that same speech, you mentioned the Willie Stargell walk-off home run against St. Louis, and and he says, well, hey, I wouldn't have had this walk-off home run had Art not walked in the fifth, I believe.
Inning.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so I wanted to ask if there are a couple of other, or if there's another story maybe about maybe a Hall of Fame player or a Hall of Fame person that you worked with or came in contact with in your career.
Well, I know I faced Bob Gibson twice. He struck me out and walked me.
Wow.
But he was at the end. It was his last year he was pitching. I remember when I struck out, he threw me a 3-2 slider that,
oh man, just
unhittable. I mean, I hate to say it, but I don't even know if our good Lord could have hit it. I mean, It was that good.
Oh, wow.
And this was his last year of pitching, right? Yeah. And I remember walking back to the dugout and I saw Willie laughing on the bench. He's having a big old chuckle. And I said, what are you laughing about? And he said, just think, Art, that's just a shadow of himself out there. And I said, well, if that's his shadow, I didn't want anything to do with the real thing. But Willie used to tell me, if you didn't get the Bob Gibson in the first inning, it's over.
Right.
And he says, once you see the sweat dripping from his chin, the game's over.
He's
loose. He's ready to go. But just to hear that about, the superstars, how good they were, and how recognized he was from the opposition.
Right.
That if you didn't get him early, forget it, And he had a little mean streak in him, evidently,
Absolutely.
Yeah, I remember Roger Mesker when I was with the Astros. He led off the game. It's a home run. One of the few he hit. I did like 2 a year.
Sure.
Hit it right down the right field line in St. Louis. He's leading off the game for us. Okay. And I mean, he's sprinting around the bases. Come across that and runs down the dugout, runs up the runway and turns around. He says, is he looking? Is he looking? I don't want to get him mad at me. So he evidently was noted for knocking somebody on their butt if they didn't do things properly.
Bob didn't take any junk off of anybody.
No, he didn't. No, he didn't.
That's a good story.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let me try and land this airplane with us with a couple more questions. And I'll get us back to other things. But so what do you want? What would you want fans and the countless people that you interacted with over the years in baseball to remember about you?
That I played the game hard.
Yeah.
That I was a great teammate.
Yep.
I was loyal. And I did the best job I could wherever I was.
Yep.
And I enjoyed every minute of it.
Yep. And that you were an incredibly classy gentleman. I'm going to add that too.
Thank you.
So you bet. It's absolutely. Is there anyone that you would care to mention? Is there a charity that we could support?
Well, the CATA Foundation in Colorado.
Okay.
It's KATA. It stands for 2 children that died when they were like in their late teens and maybe 20 years old. For a doctor and his wife that I got to meet when I was out there in Colorado. We're actually going to start a golf tournament again. It was in my name.
Okay.
And the CATA Foundation, it's to raise it for Fanconi anemia. Okay. And it's a rare disease, but it's a fatal disease. And children don't live past their early 20s. But now they're starting, we've been doing it for about 8 to 10 years now, and we've raised a lot of funds for it, and they're starting to find some breakthroughs for it. So
so the research is coming through.
Yes.
Good.
So Fanconi anemia. That's what I'd love for them to donate if they could.
And that's KATA?
KATA.
KATA. Yes. Is that just a foundation?
Yes, foundation. You can get it on the internet. You can see CATA.
CATA. So KATA Foundation.
Yep.
Well, I can't tell you what a tremendous pleasure this was, and what an honor it was to have you on my debut podcast here. And I have to apologize for you being my proverbial guinea pig here. Again, everybody, our guest today was former Major League player, coach, and manager Art Howe. And I want to express to our audience how important it is to follow the lead of our guest today and to be a Hall of Fame person who makes a difference in the lives of others. Never quit on your dreams, no matter how long it takes. Thank you again, Art. This was a really amazing conversation, and I very much appreciate you and your time, and I hope that I did right by you today, and the honor and pleasure is all mine.
Thank you, Greg.
Yes, sir.
I enjoyed every minute of it.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you, everyone, for listening to the debut Heroes and Icons podcast with your host, Greg Randolph. Please remember to follow us on Instagram at Heroes and Icons Podcast. Subscribe, like, and share us. Also look for us on SoundCloud as well as Captivate.fm and anywhere else you get your podcast. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening. We'll see you next time. And until then, good night, God bless. And we're all clear.
Thank you.
Thank you.